you know, and it's about infiltrating the circus. You know what I'm saying? Like sports is a part and parcel of the bread and circuses. You know what I'm saying? So if that's where the people at, and that might be where I'm at sometimes. You know what I'm saying? But you know, we got to meet people where they are. So if I want people to learn math, I got to go where they at and teach them math right where they at, so they can see the benefit and the value. And then, you know, that will, you know, ideally, most likely help to develop the critical thinking ability. And then once that happens on a large scale, then maybe we start to divest from the circus, you know, at some point. You know what I'm saying? But like I said earlier, it ain't gonna work by just standing on the sidelines, hating, yelling, and being mad at black people from being in the circus. You know what I'm saying? You got to get in there, get in the trenches, roll your sleeves up, and get to work. You know what I'm saying? If we really love our people, that's another thing too. A lot of our people don't really love our people. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's so easy and so comfortable for them to just basically just sit on the sidelines and talk trash, because the love ain't there. You know, being like activist spaces, and like being in the so-called conscious community, like what happens is like we tend to just like what like Lil Kim say, like play hating from the sidelines. We tend to sit back and just like be critical, like, and just, but you can't really, that's where the people are. You got to go where the people are. So like one of the things I try to do with math is, it's like, all right, y'all want to watch football? Cool. Like, let's watch football, but let's learn math through football. You want to watch the NBA? Cool. Let's learn calculus and algebra through the NBA. Like, you know, whatever. So I'm gonna meet you where you are, and then hopefully I could bring you somewhere else. And then we can have conversations about, you know, political science and, you know, more progressive, you know, views about, you know, different things. Hopefully we could do that too. But yeah, the circus is there, you know, but I think more of us gotta infiltrate it. We gotta get into that circus, you know, and be in it, but not of it though.
Yeah.
I think that's the difference, you know, because you could be in it, but not be of it, you know, just like people live in the hood, but they're not, you know, might be some people outside selling dope and shooting or whatever, but just because you live there don't mean you got to be outside selling dope and shooting, you know, but you're there because that's where you live, but you're not of that. You know what I'm saying? So it's like it's like the same type of thing. That's just something I've been thinking, that concept, just I guess the name for that, you know, infiltrate the circus. It's like just something I've been thinking about a lot in the last couple of weeks.
Damn, that's a dope idea. You came up with that?
Yeah, just thinking about bread and circuses. Yeah. And just thinking about like, you know, well, what is it that we actually have to do? Because, it just kind of came to me one day, like an epiphany. You know, how could I describe this? Because I kind of was thinking about a way to like describe like what I do with math, you know, in terms of trying to meet people where they are. Because, you know, one of the things is like trying to show the relevancy of math to any and everybody. Because that's always a consistent complaint that like students have. It's like, when am I going to use this? Like, why I need to learn this for? Like, and early in my career, I really didn't have good answers for that question. And it's really a great question, you know, but a lot of teachers, we kind of get on our feelings and like, we feel like it's an attack on our ego. So we feel like you trying to come in my profession, like, you know, trying to say like my profession is like useless. You know what I'm saying?
Is that response because you don't have the correct answer in the moment? That feeling, that kind of defensive stance among educators, is that?
I think that's part of it.
Okay.
That's definitely part of it. Yeah. You know, because, you know, and there are a lot of answers to that. That's the thing. So it's a lot of answers to it. And there are different answers for different students, you know. Because sometimes it's about, you know, like with math, sometimes it's about the ability to, you know, have job security and be able to compete for certain job opportunities. And that's something that like young people can kind of relate to more. But really on a larger, in a larger sense, it's really about just being a more well-rounded human being. And just knowing how to think more critically and just how to like solve problems. Because math is really about problem solving, you know, so, but it's so many different ways. And plus, but you gotta, once you know your students, you know what their interests are, you know what their lifestyles are like, you know, their, you know, the culture in their communities, then you can say, oh, you know what, well, we can use systems of equations to model this activity that y'all do around your way, like in your hood, like North Philly, South Philly, wherever, like, you know, but a lot of times early in your teaching career, you might not be able to make those connections. You might just like stick to the textbook.
Yeah.
And the textbook often may not even get into those types of applications. and also you may not have a strong enough understanding of math to be able to make those connections yourself. Because a lot of math, like early in my career, like my my grasp of mathematics on a deeper level was not there,
Yeah.
not what it is today, definitely. Um, and I've like really become really strong with like making those like real life connections, between to mathematics, like in the past 10 years, especially when I started like my tutoring company, because having to work with so many different individuals and different types of learners with different and diverse backgrounds, just just like just learning, okay, well, how can we apply like this formula, how can we apply this topic, or how can we like connect this to something that they're interested in and whatnot, and just thinking about those things,
What's the name of your company?
all this math.
Okay. All This Math, and that All This Math is also the name of your YouTube page, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How long? Actually, let me introduce you real quick. You just gave so much interesting stuff. I have a million questions to ask for. I'll just speak on a couple of things that you said. I like the way you describe meet you where you're at.
Hmm.
That's a great way to connect with people. Obviously, something that as we learn, we get older and understand that that's really the only way to connect people is to meet them where they're at. And something else that you just said there. Oh yeah, using math as problem solving. Like that's all it is. And through this, you show that these steps are repeatable if you apply this formula.
Hmm.
That's like the answer to life. I just started to realize, obviously, I don't have the understanding of math that you have, but like what we were speaking about prior, that math it's a language.
Hmm.
It's a numerical language.
Definitely.
And once you come to understand that, I would imagine that's why there's probably a lot of people that are successful in the financial industry. They're probably, well-rounded and have an understanding of numbers and moving them around and formulaic and, those types of things.
Hmm.
And I think that even what we talked about, this understanding the algorithm, and it all makes sense. You just have to try to understand it. So let me introduce you real quick.
Okay.
Akil Latif.
Well, Latif is my middle name, but so my government name is Akil Parker.
Oh,
So
okay.
that's why on the YouTube channel I go by Professor Parker.
Oh, okay. All right. I
Yeah.
like that. All right. So welcome back to episode 43. Today we have Professor Parker with us. Akil Parker.
Akil Parker.
I'm gonna let you intro yourself because I do introductions for people, and sometimes I go back and listen to them like, that was subpar. I hate when I give someone a lackluster introduction. So if you don't mind,
Yeah. So Professor Akil Parker. I'm basically just, excuse me, just a black man out here trying to play my part, trying to improve the relationship between mathematics and the black community, and have our people begin to understand, have more of our people, begin to understand and feel like math is a viable tool and not a bully that we should run from, but actually math is the person you call when you're getting bullied. You need somebody to have your back. You know, so yeah, I just want our people to understand math, once and for all, and not be fearful of it. And so I create resources so that we can achieve that goal. And I've been teaching for a long time, almost 20 years now. Been teaching on the high school level. I've taught middle school students, elementary school students. I currently am an adjunct at Cheyney University. I've been teaching math methods courses at Cheyney since 2019, and that's been real helpful because by doing that, I had to learn what people would call the new math, which is really Common Core math, which really is just, different methods which provide a conceptual understanding of math and a conceptual foundation. Whereas, like, when I was growing up, I was like, big into algorithms. They taught us algorithms. Like, here's the formula, plug the numbers in here, get the answer, go to the next problem. And I didn't really learn like why the formula worked, or other ways to, break a problem down and like, figure out the answers and whatnot. Um, but so the Common Core I think is very helpful. A lot of people don't like it, but I think it's just because they haven't been taught in that way. You know what I'm saying? So that's another thing I do on my channel. Like I want on my YouTube channel, I want people to understand what they call new math, which is really just Common Core math or conceptual math. I want us to really understand it. And one of the things I do on my channel and really in all my teaching is something that I've always done is try to incorporate African and African American history into the math lessons. And I've developed a teaching framework that I call Histomatics. It's kind of why I got this hoodie on. Like, this is one of my heroes, Asada Shakur. I was gonna wear some company merch, but I was like, nah, I'm gonna promote this sister right here,
okay.
Asada Shakur.
I know who she is. I didn't know what she looked like though.
Yeah, yeah. So like, so I might create some math problems dealing with, some of the things that, she discusses in her autobiography, Asada, that I highly recommend. I highly recommend that as a reading piece of reading material. But yeah, that's systematics, because I realized in the classroom that not only did a lot of our youth have deficiencies in math, but we also had deficiencies in terms of knowledge of self, historical awareness, and I think too, like, a lot of times we want the schools to, do a better job of teaching that, but we don't got time to wait around for schools to, get better. I mean, they should get better because our tax dollars are supporting them financially. That's valid.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, we don't got time to wait for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, our babies out here dying. Either dying physically in the moment, or they dying slow, like Dr. King talked about, slow psychological deaths. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though they, like, kids out here like walking zombies, in part because they don't have knowledge of self. They don't know who they really are. You know what I'm saying? Like, they don't have no historical awareness. So I try to, like, nothing against birds, but kill two birds with one stone. You know what I'm saying? Like, give them the math literacy. Like you mentioned, math is a language. So yeah, math literacy and also historical awareness at the same time. So that's what hystematics is. So you're gonna see that, when you deal with, like, the work that I do.
Yeah, I love that we live in a time right now where the awareness of how you communicate is so high and the bar is so high that you have to preface a statement with saying nothing against birds before you say killing two birds with one stone. Just a regular, just a harmless comment. But I like that. It's like, obviously you've been out here and you know what I mean? You feel it.
Yeah.
Like that's like something.
And I really don't have nothing against birds.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
yeah.
saying?
None of us
Birds,
do.
birds are cool.
Yeah,
You know what I'm
even
saying?
people
Like,
that say that.
birds are cool.
Yeah, I doubt anyone ever has. Never even thought about it like that. But it's just like now sitting and doing the podcast and communicating with people and seeing how things you say can be, spun back around you. Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. You can't please that. You know what I'm saying? But
Yeah.
yeah, respect to you for doing that.
Because I don't want you to get, like, a whole bunch of, like, people trolling you in the comments, a bunch of ornithologists, like, just angry. You know what I'm saying? Like,
what do you say about birds? Like, bro, relax. Like, he loves the birds, and he said it too.
Yeah.
So respect to you for that. I wanted to have you on because I think I'm one of those people, and in the same group as you, is where math. I actually like math. I enjoy math. Again, don't understand at your level. Obviously, I'm not a mathematician. Is that what you consider?
I do.
Okay.
I do. Yeah, I didn't at first, but as I got more deep into it, in terms of, trying to develop, like, pedagogy and different, like, teaching strategies, and I've really, like, been studying it a lot, like, the different aspects of pure math. I do classify myself as that now.
Okay.
At this stage. Yeah.
Yeah, so doing math when we were kids, for me, it didn't mean anything. It just didn't, math didn't mean anything until I reached a physics course. That's when it started because, like, the formulas are applicable. You're trying to figure out something like a force or whatever it is that you're trying to figure out in physics. So then it was like, oh, you're not just solving problems for the sake of solving problems. Like, you know what I mean? It's like, what are we doing? Like, what does that answer actually mean? And then I wouldn't say that I had a photographic memory, but because formula is just like repeatable steps, I would just look at something and I would just memorize it.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't even understand it. I could get the answer at the end, but only because I just memorized the formula. I memorized, there'd be like 5 or 6 formulas to get you through a whole test. Just memorize them all and just do it.
Yeah.
And just get good enough grade to pass, and that was pretty much it.
Like force equals mass times acceleration.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Simple formulas like that you can just do over. You just look at it, be like, okay, do that. Just do all the steps. You got the answer, but it's like I don't know what it means, but I got the answer.
Because one thing we could say is that, like, physics and chemistry are 2 courses that come to mind that are considered science courses. But we could easily just call them math classes.
Yeah,
just applied math.
Yeah, I was doing hella math.
That's all physics and chemistry is. And there's a lot of other science classes that are like that too, science courses.
Yeah.
It's just applied math, which is important because, again, if more of us start to look at it through that lens, then it's less likely that we'll ask those questions like, when am I going to use this? Why do I need to know this?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's the application of math is key because that answers the question. But one thing I realized is this: a lot of times students may not know the purpose of math because in their math classes, they're not doing enough application problems. They're not doing enough word problems, basically. A lot of people shy away from word problems. A lot of teachers shy away from word problems. I'll throw myself on the sword. I was one of them teachers early in my career. I used to shy away from teaching the word problems because as a student, I would do word problems, but it was like something that I was a little fearful of. Like I didn't like word problems because I didn't really know how to grasp them and how to like, how to get to the answers for a lot of them.
Okay.
But throughout my career, I like had to force myself to like really learn how to do word problems. And now I'm like real proficient. And I run at them. I jump at the opportunities to do word problems and to teach them.
Yeah.
Because I want our young people to understand word problems because that's the key. That's like I said, like that's how you're able to see the relevancy of the math. It's like through the word problems. And here's another thing too, like so the textbook might give some word problems that are culturally irrelevant, totally irrelevant. And oftentimes because there's a big push for cultural relevancy, which I'm very big on. I'm all about cultural relevancy, right? But a lot of times even some educators will kind of shy away from things that are culturally irrelevant. But in mathematics, it's all about the framework though, right? Because it might be a textbook example like that's not relevant to your students, but the methodology is relevant. So as long as you might use the irrelevant content to learn the framework, it's like, going to Target, you buy a picture frame, right? When you get home, it's a stock photo already in the picture frame, right? Just so the person can get an idea, oh, this is what the picture frame is going to look like in your house. You take that stock photo out and throw it away or recycle it or whatever. Then you put your picture in there, but the frame is the same.
Mm-hmm.
So the method that you use to solve the word problem is the same method. So it don't really matter if it's irrelevant to your life, but a lot of kids be like, man, this don't got nothing to do with my life. I don't care about this. It's like, bro, it's not about the content.
Yeah.
It's about the frame. You know what I'm saying? It's about the frame. Like we're recording this podcast right now. We having this conversation. Like people that record podcasts, they don't have they may not be having this type of conversation, but you can still learn from them because they still can help you with the videography, with the audio, with the, the editing and everything. So you might be working with somebody that's, talking about something totally different that you don't care about, but you can still learn those skills though.
Yeah.
The videography, the editing, the audio, all that stuff you need to know. So the math word problems are the same way. And I think young people got to understand that, and the educators got to understand that too. And then we can get to the culturally relevant material. But a lot of times we got to create that on our own.
Yeah.
We got to create our own content, our own culturally relevant content. And I think when you get more comfortable with math generally, then you figure out ways to just like, okay, boom, okay, we teaching this standard, or like we teaching, quadratic equations. Okay, like, well, how can I make some word problems that deal with quadratic equations that's relevant to my students that's from Southwest Philly? You know what I'm saying? Or wherever, right? How can I do that? Okay, once I know them, I know what they like, I know what they're into, I know what their neighborhood is like, what their block is like. All right, because I understand quadratic equations to that level, I can create word problems and examples that enable me to teach them quadratic equations or quadratic functions, how to solve them, how to understand them, how to identify different parts of them, but that's based on their life experience.
Yeah.
Right? But at first you might have to learn it through looking at something that don't have nothing to do with your life. You know what I'm saying? But that's just what it is.
Do you think that work, obviously it's a necessary work because you're dealing with children. Do you think this is more of I guess like a sort of a psychology question in general to kids and how they receive the world? Do you think it's because at the time the perspective, of a child is so me, the picture, it's like they're the center of their own universe at the time. So all they see is like how it relates to me, where I stand right now, as opposed to you looking at it when you get older and understanding like the all-encompassing aspect of the world. You get what I'm saying a little bit?
Yeah, and I think even adults do that. I think naturally as human beings, we tend to be very self-centered, which makes sense. It's kind of like, what do they say? When you know you were at an event and somebody shows you pictures, right? Like who's the first person you look for?
Yeah.
You look for
Yeah,
yourself.
you're right. Yeah.
You look for see like where am I at in this picture? You know what I'm saying? Like, 'cause I'm like, yo, I was there.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How come I'm not in this pic? You know what I mean? Or like if it's one of your kids or something, like, yo, my child was there. You know what I'm saying? You see the pictures like, oh, where's my child at? Right? That's the first person you're probably gonna look for. I think that's just human nature.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with that. But it's like with in terms of education, I think we do the same thing. So like one of the arguments for culturally responsive pedagogy is like, children need to see themselves in the lesson.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and then when you talk about, in terms of mathematics, another thing that I'm very big on is, this promotion of, black mathematicians, just knowledge, just general information and knowledge about black mathematicians. Like, because one of the reasons like black kids don't think that they can excel in math is because they don't know that black people have excelled in math, right? And like, black mathematicians, they should be recognized and they should be, emulated, and they should be, talked about and discussed beyond just in February, right? Not just during Black History Month either, but on a regular basis, in math classrooms, history classrooms, all types of classrooms, science classrooms, right? We should talk about the black mathematicians, but we also got to go back to ancient times, because we also don't want to get caught up in this trick bag of, well, if we recognize the black mathematicians in the United States, then that gives the impression that, oh, black people wasn't doing math until they came to this country. Or, just because somebody got a PhD in mathematics from the University of Pennsylvania in, 1920 or 1930 or whatever, and they say, oh, the first black person to earn a PhD in mathematics. It's like that like I said, that gets you caught in the trick bag, because then you're thinking like, oh, well, we wasn't doing math in Africa. And we was doing math in Africa.
Yeah, of course.
We was doing the math in Africa prior to the Greeks doing it, even though a lot of those formulas, like Pythagorean theorem, they named after them. In our textbooks that we use, you'll learn about Pythagoras, not knowing that Pythagoras studied in ancient Africa and ancient Kemet for 22 years under our ancestors and learned all that, went back to Greece and was like, boom, hey, check this out, y'all. This is what I learned. And then, Europeans are very good at marketing.
Yeah.
So they name it after themselves. You know what I'm saying? Instead of naming it after the source, which I'm not mad at that.
Yeah.
Y'all want to do that? Fine. It's cool. It's our responsibility to let our children know the truth, though.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So yeah, we definitely need to recognize and promote black mathematicians in this country, that were born here, and and then taught at historically black colleges, throughout the 20th century and whatnot. But we also got to take it back further, because it's like the whole like 1619 project. You know what I mean? Like that whole idea that like our history starts at 1619. Like if you started at 1619, everything looks like progress, and that's a scheme, right? It's like we were the first civilization, the first human beings. So you got to take it back to Africa. You got to tell the whole story, even in terms of mathematics, because you can't have thriving civilizations like we had without mathematics, without calculus, without algebra, geometry, trigonometry. You just can't have it.
Yeah.
It doesn't exist. So that's why another thing you got to be careful about, like when we study a lot of this math, because like they throw the in a lot of the math textbooks, you'll get the like little subtle like cultural violence. They'll be like, oh, Leibniz, started this in this year, or Pierre Fermat started this in this year. It's like, bro, like how he start that in like 1600 something when my ancestors was getting it in like building pyramids like 10,000 years before that. Like that's impossible, bro. Like
yeah, that part I was literally gonna say. Like I'm aware of some pretty complex building structures that you would think, based on the preciseness in which they were built, they were doing some math. You know? I mean, it's like they didn't line up that way by accident.
And that's the thing. So like, when young people, make these arguments, like, sometimes out of frustration, but mainly a lot of times out of ignorance, and a lot of times they get it from their parents or whoever, that they don't need math. Math is irrelevant. The math also provides critical thinking ability. And with critical thinking ability, you can bear witness when somebody's playing in your face. So it's like I just mentioned, like you read the textbook and they talking about Pierre Fermat did this and this year, or like Galileo or like Newton did this and this year, or they invented calculus. Like how you invent calculus in the 1700s when my ancestors was using that 10,000 years before that?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, but you won't know somebody playing in your face if you don't have critical thinking ability. By practicing mathematics, you develop critical thinking ability. So you're kind of like on guard. You're like, wait a minute. Again, because you recognize contradictions. That's algebra. Like, if I tell you that x equals 5 in an equation, but then I take that 5 and I substitute it into the equation, and I end up, and I do the mathematics, I do the calculation, and I end up with a statement that basically says 300 equals negative 20. 300 don't equal negative 20. That's a contradiction. I know something ain't adding up. So it's just like when people say that all the time, like that's common language, like something ain't adding up.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to scheme. But that's mathematical thinking.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like, we got to be able to do that. So we got to also see like the value in mathematics and like stop buying into this like programming where we shy away from math, because that in itself is a scheme, because we're programmed to disqualify ourselves. Because think about it, like think about math as a gatekeeper for a lot of opportunities, just on a job and career basis. Think about STEM,
Yeah,
science,
absolutely.
technology, engineering, mathematics, and how many opportunities are available to those that have a certain math background.
Mm-hmm.
Like math's the gatekeeper. It's a lot of people that would be great at computer engineering,
Mm-hmm.
architecture, the natural sciences, mathematics,
All of it.
yeah, all of these types of fields. But once they go to college, they realize, oh, I got to take all the math classes. Nah, I'm cool. I'm cool on that. Let me go major in something else in the liberal arts.
Yeah.
Nothing against liberal arts, but you shouldn't do liberal arts because that's what you're limited to. You should have options to do anything you want. And then if you want to go into liberal arts, cool, go into liberal arts, but don't just go into liberal arts because you feel like you can't do nothing else. And a lot of people feel like they can't do nothing else because they don't have the math skills,
Where
right?
do you think that fear comes from? Because I share that. I had that for certain. What you said there was exactly why I shied away from certain courses. This is exactly that. It was, this has too much math. Let me try something a little less obstructions, I would say.
It's a programming.
And I like math.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
it's a programming, and it's a lot of negative propaganda around math, and I think it's very intentional, low
Okay.
key, very intentional because what it does, it limits competition. Because if I'm like, if I'm a person and I'm part of a certain group and I want my children in my group to be able to become the engineers and the architects and the doctors and the registered nurses and everything. I want them to kind of have those areas on lock, job wise. One of the ways to ensure that is to get potential competitors to disqualify themselves from competition before they even have a chance to get into the game. So if you got young children, young black kids from the hood, maybe even from the suburbs, like, yo, math is too hard. Once you plant that seed, get them thinking that, like at 5 years old, 6 years old, 7 years old, they turn on the TV, watch their favorite YouTubers saying how math is dumb and math is boring. They go to the TV shows, their favorite, television actors are saying the same thing. Their friends are saying it, their parents are saying it. Parents are like, oh, math was never my thing. Math was too hard. Then they grow up, they're like, they never gonna compete for engineering jobs. They never gonna compete for jobs as physicians. They never gonna be able to compete because math is the gatekeeper. So I don't gotta tell you. So it's like that scene from the Malcolm X movie and the scene from his autobiography, where the teacher, his eighth grade or seventh grade English teacher, tells him, Malcolm, you shouldn't don't try to be an attorney. He says, I don't know if I'm allowed to say
Oh,
that, but
sorry. I
all
got
right,
it. Don't
yeah,
worry about
yeah. He says that. He
it.
says you should try to be a carpenter, right? That's not even necessary to say in this day and age, because all we got to do is just convince you that the tool that you'll need to gain access to those fields and those areas will convince you to believe that it's too hard for you. So now I don't really got to discriminate against you. I don't have to proactively discriminate against you. The discrimination is more benign.
Yeah.
Like benign neglect, like from the 70s, Richard Nixon and all that, right? It's more like a benign neglect thing going on. But I use math as because like the late Bob Moses, who started the Algebra Project, co-authored the book Radical Equations along with Charles Cobb. They were both SNCC workers, Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in the 60s, members and workers down in Mississippi putting in work. Bob Moses said that mathematics education is the civil rights issue of the 21st century. So it's the thing that like we don't really talk about. Like, there's a lot of talk about like literacy in terms of like, the English language. But like you mentioned, I'm gonna keep going back to this. Math is a language in and of itself.
Yeah.
If you don't understand the language of math, you can't really compete. I think about all the rappers over the years that, complain and talk about, they signed these bad deals and, they got into these deals and didn't understand the contract. When we hear that, we often will think, oh, it's because they couldn't read. They couldn't read the language. They didn't understand the legalese. I think that's part of it. But what is a contract? A contract is nothing but, especially if there's money involved, a contract is nothing but a long math word problem. That's all it is. It's an equation, a
Yeah.
bunch of equations. So when you read that contract, there's numbers involved, there's quantities, there's percentages. It's not just that you don't understand the language, you don't understand the math that's in there. But nobody don't talk about that though. They make it be, they limit it to, oh, well, they just need to learn how to read. They need English language vocabulary. They do need that, but that's not all people need. People need to understand math. Like math is really math is really the true gatekeeper. So this is why like we have to be convinced and programmed from a young age to like try to stay away from math. It's like, nah, don't mess with that. because you can compete once you are strong in math, you can compete.
Yeah, you can do anything. I've like at my age, I come to realize I don't even know how long, but the world is math. You know, like the
Yeah,
world is shaped and moved by numbers. So like the whole thing without, I don't even know, like without math, nothing. There's no development in technology. It's over. You know, coding, like it's
all
everything.
of it.
Yeah, everything's math.
Everything is math.
And it's interesting that you say I always ask people this question because I really don't want to think that it's intentional. You know, I don't want to. You know what I mean? Like I'm sure you come to a place where you just realize like that's what it is, but that's a hard way to go through the world knowing that I don't want to say conspiring, but there's a group that would rather that the access to entry was harder. You know what I mean?
I
Like
mean,
that there's a structure in society that exists that's
yeah,
creating that because you don't hear about like you're right what you described. You only hear that the pathway to success is through athleticism, through some sort of arts, through some sort of entertainment. And right now, I personally, besides for you, don't even know like a prolific or a mathematician that stands out. I'm sure you know several, but you don't see them in social media, or my algorithm at least doesn't have a lot of them. Or like a prominent figure that represents math.
and
You know, like
that's
where
not
is that?
accidental.
Yeah, that doesn't exist.
That's not
Yeah, a
accidental at all.
prominent black figure, let's say, that
Yeah,
represents math. You know?
because like young brothers think that they can play basketball. One of the reasons and they might be trash at basketball,
Yeah,
but they believe they can play, partly because they're constantly bombarded with these images of black men playing basketball.
yeah. Hmm.
So if you want young people, young black boys, young black girls to think that they can become mathematicians, we got to show them mathematicians.
Yeah, you gotta see it.
So that's part of the work that I'm trying to do is to promote and popularize black mathematicians, and not just black mathematicians, but just people in different walks of life that are using algebra on a regular basis, using calculus, using that understand it, or people that even just maybe when they went to college they took that coursework, or
Mm.
even when they was in high school they excelled at that coursework, and we have conversations about that because a lot of times that's why I appreciate you bringing me onto your platform
Thank you
because
so much for coming.
one of the things that I've been trying to do over the last few years is just, in terms from a PR standpoint and a marketing standpoint, is like rebrand mathematics for our people. Because mathematics has been branded for us as something that's too hard for us. We're not smart enough to do collectively,
Yeah,
that we should stay away from, right? And we don't have enough positive conversations around math. Like black people need to have more positive conversations about math so that young people can hear those conversations and be like, wait a minute. Because we have a lot of positive conversations about basketball, football, rapping, singing, dancing, um, eating good food, preparing good food, all of these things. And nothing against those things, but I think there needs to be more diversity, more balance. So we got to add the academics into it, right? Because we're very intelligent people.
yeah. You
But
can do
just
anything you
looking at the
want to.
mainstream media, you wouldn't think that. You would think all we do is like play sports, dance, shuck and jive, rap, talk trash. Like you would think that that's all we do.
Yeah,
But we're much more than that,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
But a lot of us, we don't even embrace those other aspects of ourselves because that's what we see. We do what we see, and like the young, it's much easier, statistically speaking, to probably get a PhD in mathematics than to become a successful rapper. But more people try to become a successful rapper. And I mean, it's a lot of reasons that, like, it's a lot of things that prohibit people from getting a PhD in mathematics. Some people that never enters their thought process. Like, PhD in mathematics, what would I do with that? You can do everything with that.
Yeah,
You
every
can
and
do a lot of
everything.
things with
Yeah,
that.
you can do it.
You know,
Yeah.
and
What can't you do?
and while I'm on that point, this ties directly into why parents shouldn't be telling their children or thinking that their children don't need this much math. I'm gonna tell you why. If we look at like the political landscape, right? When you think about corporations that control this country, basically control the world, really, you think about government entities, people that earn PhDs and master's degrees in mathematics, even bachelor's degrees in mathematics, they're getting hired by these corporations, right? To create different data, to manipulate data, to run optimization formulas, and all these different types of things, right? So these corporations and these government entities essentially control our lives because they dictate the parameters of the environments that we exist within, right? So if the people and the entities that are essentially controlling our lives are hiring mathematicians and using mathematicians to do this, then as a parent, why would you not want your child to know just as much mathematics as the people that are responsible for creating the environments that will dictate the outcome of your child's lives?
Yeah.
Like, why would you want that? It's an example to me it's an example of asymmetrical warfare. It's asymmetrical warfare because, like, okay, the corporation is trying to dictate how we're going to live, right? They hire mathematicians to come in, like I said, run the optimization models, create the formulas to do this, create the formula to do that. How do we maximize the number of people that's going to go to Target on Saturdays or whatever? How do we do that? This is all mathematics that we used to do that, right?
Yeah.
So then you, the person, you just going to sit up here and just like, oh, I'm going to just go to Target. Like, because they create the formula, they create the environment, they make sure I see this many advertisers on my Instagram and on my Facebook, and I make sure I see this much on YouTube and on TV
Like
or
a
whatever.
zombie.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So, but maybe if you understood the math, then you would understand how you're being manipulated. And then maybe you can stand back and say, wait, hold on a second. Maybe I don't need to go today. You know? So it's like asymmetrical warfare because when parents say, you know, and admit like, nah, I don't want my child to learn that much. They don't need to learn all that. Like, why not? You're projecting your own, you might have your own personal fear of mathematics as a parent. You're projecting it onto your child. Like, you shouldn't do that. Don't limit your child. And even as a parent, it's never too late for you to learn the math that you didn't learn 20 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, right? So it's like with that asymmetrical warfare, they got fighter jets, right? These corporations and these governments, they got fighter jets. And you telling your child they don't need to learn math, they don't need to learn calculus, they don't need to learn a higher level math. You sending them out there with a pocket knife. Who gonna win?
Yeah.
You setting your child up for failure. So that's something else that you just made me think of that when we started talking about that.
Yeah, in a world that's advancing technologically at the speed of light, yeah, you might want to invest in, understanding how that's happening and why that's happening. Do you think, were you always an analytical person?
Yeah, I was always an analytical person. Always, kind of sit back, just like try to think and reason about things and, try to figure out why things are the way they are.
Yeah, see, me,
Figure out what makes sense.
same way. But to people, I don't know how you've experienced in your life, but people that are analytical, like I have to figure out how to sometimes when to be analytical and when to not, because in feelings like when there's emotions involved, you need to sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
and that's hard. And to people that aren't analytical, the fact that they're even being targeted, I'm not even sure they're aware. You know what I mean? I don't even know there's awareness at any level. Like I just don't know that they realize that they're in that, like that something's happening to them and it's not by accident.
I've definitely had that issue in relationships. I had to learn as an example because, being analytical and being very mathematical, I'm a problem solver. So like, my girl starts talking to me, telling me about her day. She's having a bad day. And I didn't realize that, oh, she just wants to vent. She don't really want a solution.
Yeah.
And in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm listening. Because it's like a math equation. Okay, you're giving me the information. Okay. It's like a geometric proof. It's like, all right, given this lady said this to be at work today, and she shouldn't have said that because, and I did this report and I turned that in and she did that. And then she's going to email me and do this. And I'm sitting there listening to all of it. I'm like, okay, so how are we going to solve this problem? In my mind, I'm just like, my ideas are like ruminating. Like, I'm like, yo, like, how are we going to solve this problem? And then I'm like, I naturally go and see the thing is like it's coming from a good space.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to like that's a form of protection, I think, as a man. Like I'm trying to like give you a solution to your problem. Right. But I had to learn, like, oh, that's not what she wants. She don't want the solution.
Yeah.
She like her solution, right, in that moment is she just wants somebody to listen. Wants somebody to hear her out. She wants to be heard. She wants to be made to feel like her feelings are valid. And that's something I had to learn. So it's like with being analytical, you do, like, as you said, you got to know how to, when to apply it and when not to, when to turn it on, when to turn it off, well, I won't say turn it on, turn it off. I would say when to share the analysis. Because even when I'm listening, I'm still thinking of the solution.
Yeah.
I just might not say nothing.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, yeah, yes. Because she said that, okay, so yeah, that's probably what she should do. She should probably do this and then do that and then go back and then send her an email saying this. But I'm not gonna tell her that. I'm gonna just listen.
And that feels good, right?
It's knowledge.
That's like at the core of who you are. You're a problem solving person. So that feels good to come to use the steps, the formula that you use to use the steps and get to a result, a resolution.
Yeah.
That's an interesting. Just all of it's very interesting. I always thought math was for literally everything, but I don't. As far as feelings, like you can't quantify, you can't, there's no numbers that you can do with that. I would say that's the only thing that really emotions, feelings, and a human experience are the only things that you really can't apply math to. far as I can tell. Everything else, you can numeric, you can figure this out. You can quantify it. You can put it in the box and feelings and experience, you can't.
I think
I don't
I
think.
would push back on that. I think you can, because I think everything can be quantified.
Yeah.
I think everything, but I think some things are much more difficult to quantify than others. Like I think feelings are very difficult to quantify, but I think there's a way to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know how to do it. I don't know the formula.
Yeah.
I don't know the algorithm,
But you believe it
but
exists.
I believe it exists.
Yeah.
I believe that maybe that's one of those like formulas that a person might spend years trying to figure out or work through. But I do think that everything is predictable. The question is just how difficult is it going to be to predict it?
Yeah.
And some things are very difficult to predict, but I do think everything can be predicted. Just some things like I said, more difficult than others.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially with feelings because there's no constant, like the variables are forever changing. So trying to figure like how are we gonna math this? That it can be different. It can be the same person, the same thing on a given day. It could just be different.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is an interesting part of it. And I once thought that music was outside of that too, but I've come to realize recently, you probably know, I believe Bach, they were using music to form their symphonies, correct?
Using math for that?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Did I say music? Yeah, they were using math. My apologies. Yeah, they were using math. I didn't know that because when you're listening to I'm sure you listened heard classical music before, you hear it and you're like, damn, why does this feel the way it feels? Like, why does this sound? Why does this pitch? Why does it resonate so deeply? Why does it sound so perfect?
It's a
And then you
pattern.
realize, yeah, it's
Yeah.
math. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're using math to do it. It's not by accident, which is you don't know that.
It's
Well,
the
I
beauty.
didn't know that.
That what you just mentioned is like part of the beauty of mathematics that a lot of people never get to, right? We're blocked from seeing the beauty of math, right? Because we get so caught up in our school experience with a lot of times they're poor instructional methods. So it makes you dislike math,
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
You never kind of get over that hump where you're like, wait, I really like this now, and then you see the beauty of it. Cause like, just for me as an example, being able to take a problem, it could be a calculus problem, pre-calculus, algebra, geometry, but being able to solve the same problem in like 4 different ways and get the same answer, that's a beautiful thing to me. And just see the interconnection of the different methods. Another thing, so there's this scholar, this late scholar, she's from Baltimore, that I've been I've been researching. I recently researched or found out about her like earlier this year. Her name is, she's transitioned, I think last year, Dr. Gloria Gilmer. Dr. Gloria Gilmer is a sister. And again, I was talking about, we got to promote black mathematicians, right? Went to Morgan State, did some of her academic work at Marquette and I think at Northwestern. Then I think she taught at Morgan back in Baltimore, but she did work in the area of ethnomathematics. And ethnomathematics is a field of math where it deals with the cultural aspects of math and how math is applied within different cultures. So one of the things that she studied hairstyles. She studied braiding patterns, cornrow patterns, the parts that people make when they get their hair cornrowed and braided and whatnot. And I think that's another example of the beauty of mathematics because all of those are what we call tessellations. And those are all, that's a part of geometry. So when you you see a nice looking young lady, nice looking woman.
Can I pause you for one sec?
Sure.
Tessellations. I can't let that go by. Can you explain that real quick? I was going to say to the people, but to me as well.
Tessellations are, and I wish I had a better definition.
Anything.
They're like basically geometric patterns.
Okay.
Geometric patterns. It could be lines. It could be like circles.
Okay.
But yeah, just different geometric patterns.
Okay.
That's basically what tessellations are, to my knowledge.
Okay. That'll work.
I do want to look that up, like once we finish recording. But yeah, tessellations to my knowledge, they're geometric patterns. But you see that woman, with her hair freshly braided and whatnot, and you think it looks nice. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, she's attractive, but you're seeing the beauty of geometry.
Yeah.
So that's another example of the beauty of math.
Yeah.
Right. But if nobody makes that connection for you, or you don't, have that epiphany and make that connection yourself, then it just won't happen for you. You'll just be thinking like, oh, what does geometry have to do with my life? You know what I'm saying? Like anytime, like hair, that cosmetology, like hair braiding, Somebody with a sister with a bust down with a middle part, like all of that is geometry.
Yeah.
All of it
Mm-hmm.
is geometry, is algebra, and that, all of it. Like the different, like my daughter spends time, making sure her edges are laid before school every morning. Or before she goes to dance practice. All that is mathematical. Those curves, and the reason it looks nice, it's like those are curves. Like
Yeah.
we can graph those.
Yep.
We can graph those, and see that's one of the things. Like kids be like, "What I need graphing for? What I need to learn how to graph for?" You're already doing it. You're a young girl. You getting up 6 o'clock in the morning to make sure you got time to do your edges, so you go to school looking a certain way,
Mm-hmm.
right? You doing algebra anyway. You just don't realize it.
Yep.
Because when them curves, it's all about them curves. All those curves can be quantified and represented as different equations, different functions,
Yeah.
right? And I think but see, that is a big part of how we have to educate our children differently, because the educator, the teacher, has a responsibility. They got to make that connection. They got to, like Nas said, we got to bridge the gap.
Mm-hmm.
We don't bridge that gap. So it's like the young people is over here, the young sister over here waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, make sure her edges are laid, right? And then the teacher's over here trying to teach quadratic functions. And then the teacher don't know how to make that connection. Where it's like, bro, it's the same thing.
Yeah, make it make sense to them.
Yeah. So every time, and what happens once the teacher makes that connection, or once the teacher is trained to make that connection, then every time that young girl wake up in the morning and she doing her edges, those mathematical ideas are going to be reinforced, because now there's an academic connection to that activity. So it's a form of kinesthetic learning, right? But if you're the teacher, you don't make that connection. You just you locked into the textbook instead of locked into the culture. Then the child's not going to benefit from that. And then the kid's going to be out here on the internet talking about, graphing don't matter. Why I need the graph? Why do I need algebra? Why do I need calculus? Why I need to learn all this? They're going to be saying that stuff.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they're doing it every day.
Doing it every day.
Yeah. Unknowingly.
Don't even dig it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. It's definitely all about the curves. Shit. What was I about to say to you there? Some of this stuff. I always say I can edit, but then I never edit. I just leave the pause because I like to make it genuine and real. It's like it's real time. Something I was going to say to you about, I'll just jump to something else. Like the cultural relevancy of it, obviously that's something that needs to be taught, right? Because if it's not naturally something that's culturally relevant to you, you don't realize that it has relevancy. You know what I mean? So that's something that needs to be taught to teachers.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Especially when there's always cultural relevancy. The question we got to ask is whose culture? Right? Whose culture is it relevant to? Because it's somebody's culture has been poured into that textbook. Like the textbook that's being used or that online program, there's somebody's culture. It might not be yours, but it's somebody's. So if you have students that are of a different culture from the culture that is being recognized in that content, then yeah, as a teacher, if you care and you really want to benefit the students, then you got to get active. Now, in a lot of educational spaces, public schools, charter schools, private schools, they're not doing that work because they don't care. They're like, yo, like, listen, this is you got to, get in where you fit in. And yeah, sure, we can spend energy to fight against that. And I think we should. But the question becomes, what percentage of our energy should we spend fighting against that? And what percentage of our energy should we spend empowering and trying to educate parents
just doing the work
to be able to provide that in the household? Because if you're providing a cultural grounding and a cultural foundation in the household, and then your child goes into that space where there is what I call cultural violence, where they're being essentially in subtle and not so subtle ways that they are inferior people.
Mm-hmm.
If you got that cultural grounding, it's a defense mechanism. It's like a shield. It's like, yeah, okay, I know y'all gonna talk about this. Like, okay, you're gonna talk about, Europeans did this, Europeans did that, white men discovered everything. You know what I'm saying? Like white men are like Marvel comic superheroes, like, you know what I mean? So by saying that, what you're saying, conversely, I'm gonna draw the conclusion, if I don't know any better, that black people never did nothing. Africans never did nothing, right? Like, yeah, I might buy into the negative propaganda, the false negative propaganda that we was in Africa swinging from trees and, living like savages until these Europeans came and actually saved us. So that's why some people out here thinking that the slave trade was actually beneficial, right? So, but again, if you got that cultural grounding, then when you receive information in that educational space that kind of leans toward that, you're like, you dismiss that. You know, that won't even enter into your mind. But yeah, that the cultural relevancy piece is key. And I think it's really just, I think it's also unfortunate that we have to have a term for that. Because if we have to have a term, cultural relevancy, that means that it's not something that can be taken for granted. It's not something that goes without saying. But I think just good education already is imbued with cultural relevancy, right? But the fact that we have to spend so much time talking about cultural relevancy and having, you know, conferences about cultural relevancy and having professional developments at schools all across the country about cultural relevancy shows that it's something that many people do not want to do. So with that, when you take that into account, then the question becomes, at what point do we just create our own institutions? So then we don't got to have this conversation. Because if we create our own institutions, because every public school system is essentially a European-centered school system. It's basically what it is.
Yeah.
So if we want African-centered institutions, we got to create that. And there've been a lot in the past. There's some that exist today. I don't think, you know, they don't get the support that they should get, but you know, that's our responsibility. We got to support them. We got to support the ones that do exist, and we got to position ourselves to create more of them. So then we don't even because then once we do that, we don't got to talk about cultural relevancy, because cultural relevancy becomes an issue when we're in somebody else's space. Like we want to be acknowledged when we're in some space that somebody else controls. Once you control your own space, then we don't got to talk about that.
See, that's interesting. I'm thinking, and this is just right now in the moment without really having a lot of time to really process it, but it seems like you, like who you are, is birthed because of that need to push back. And it seems like as the collective consciousness of humans evolves and has more awareness of the need for that, you kind of realize that, you know, we're taking up space in a world that really wasn't meant for us, you know? And you have to like forcefully create that space, you know, like we're here, like it or, you know what I mean? We're here, like it or not. You know, like your ideals represent to that to me. And I don't know if you get that pushback without his existence at all. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying?
So the question you're asking is, would there be pushback?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I guess if we would even evolve to this point where you feel like the fight to assert that relevancy,
which is really just a fight to assert our own humanity.
Yeah.
Being able to teach your children who they are is really just about being a human being. You know, it's just a human thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, whether it be their history, whether it be how, you know, different, you know, disciplines and subjects such as mathematics can be used to help in their existence and help to develop and maintain society. You know, it's really just about, you know, being human. But yeah, I mean, there's gonna be pushback because, again, I mean, it disrupts the status quo. So yeah, anything that disrupts the status quo is gonna have pushback.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Nah, go ahead.
I would assume that just to give the benefit of the doubt that there's probably some teachers that are promoting a lot of this, hoping they're unaware of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think
there might be some awareness, but for the most part, they're just doing their job or a job, not realizing that what they're doing because this thing, the structure of this has been created X amount of years back, and you're just perpetuating a system that's been designed this way, not realizing, hopefully, you know, to give the benefit of the doubt, that they don't realize they're doing it.
It's all encompassing. You know, I had a student, one of the best. I've taught a lot of great students, you know, and from teaching great students, I've become a great teacher over the years. Some would say I'm great, but it comes from the students, from having the experience with the students. One of the many great students I've taught had the opportunity to teach. He said something in class one day. This was like back in 2011, probably maybe 2010, 2011. He said, "Park." That's what my students would call me. A fish don't know that it's wet. And I said, man, I was taken aback by that. Because I think we was talking about, either we were talking about this or I made a direct correlation to this. Capitalism, you know, it's an all-encompassing system. And you're just in it, so you don't think about it, you know, and you don't think that there could be an alternative way of living. You know, so like, I think that applies to teachers. A lot of teachers are just like, look, this is how I was trained, and I believe that I'm doing the right thing. But
Hmm.
until somebody offers you an alternative and you get to experience that cognitive dissonance where you're like, damn, like maybe I wasn't doing the right thing all these times. I thought I was doing the right thing
Yeah.
based on the information and the knowledge that I had up to that point. But now somebody's introduced something else. So now I can't, I, it's almost like when somebody, you see something, you can't unsee it.
Yeah.
Like once you know something, now you know it. You
Yeah.
know, it's like Frantz Fanon talked about that. Like once you know the truth, Frantz Fanon said, once you know, one of the many things he said, once you know the truth, you only got two options at that point. You're either gonna, you know, deny the truth and act like you don't know it, or you're gonna uphold the truth and move a certain way. But if once you know the truth, when you realize like, damn, like what I've been doing thus far up to this point was based on a lie, was based on falsehood.
Hmm.
So now it might be because there's so much inertia behind you, and this is what you've been doing for like the last 20, 30, 40 years. There's a temptation to just keep doing that, right? Because
That's
it
math.
might be comfortable, right? It might be more comfortable because like, man, if I can't switch up now because I've been doing this all this time, but I know it's wrong though. So you got to make a choice. As a grown man or a grown woman, you got to make a choice. You can't sit on the fence. You got to pick a side, right? That's what Fanon said. You know, I highly recommend his work. Anybody watching this, Frantz Fanon, Wretched of the Earth, Black Skin, White Masks, Toward a Dying Colonialism. There's another book he wrote. I can't think of the name of it, but yeah, definitely check out Frantz Fanon and his work. The Black Panthers used to read when they first started. They had new members read The Wretched of the Earth, by Frantz Fanon.
Okay, I heard the book before. I heard people speak on it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, or that situation, it sounds, as someone that's analyzing what you're saying there, that sounds like a mathematical equation too, because like you said, a thing at rest tends to stay at rest. And
hmm
because there's inertia behind that, it's a force that's already going. So it's going to
yeah,
continue to keep going unless you represent the opposing force that pushes back on it. That's kind of what I meant by you being birthed by a system. It just seems like all these things had to happen to get like right here, what you're doing.
yeah, yeah. And well, one of the things that had to happen is me just being fortunate enough to have been exposed to many ancestors that were doing the same work. You know, I just look at it like I'm just carrying on tradition. I'm
Mm.
just carrying on a tradition, a black radical tradition, of black people that, wanted us to be able to recognize our full humanity, no matter where we at in the world, no matter who's in control, and just trying to figure out a way for us to do that and make that happen. And, whether it's through education, whether it's through, policy or, whatever, organizing, different types of activism, there's just been so many people that have done that work, and that's why like studying becomes so important because if somebody never like somebody might hear me talk and be like, there he go talking that crazy stuff again, but it's not crazy to me because I know it's normal to me because I've studied so many people that have done this and have been about this life. But if you never was exposed to somebody that was about this life, then it does sound crazy, right? And I think that's one of the reasons that we got to read more. Just as a people, we got to read and study more. You know what I'm saying? And like if I never read like Asada Shakur's autobiography, like I probably wouldn't be, the way I am. You know what I'm saying? Or I'd be
Hmm.
a little bit less. Because the thing again, math. Taking it back to mathematics, math just makes sense. 2 plus 2 equals 4. That just makes sense, right? A lot of the things she said in her book in terms of her political analysis, they just made sense. And a lot of times when we read these books, we expose ourselves to these books, and then we be like, you just sit back and be like, damn, I never thought about it like that. Yeah, why do we do that? Why do we live like that? Why do we let the government do that? Why do we let the corporations do that? But if you never thought about that, you just gonna keep going along like everything is cool, right? And then somebody that has been exposed to a different way of thinking, you're gonna look at them like it's something wrong with them, right? But the reading is key because sometimes you gotta see stuff for yourself, but you might not necessarily see it because you might not naturally. Because again, that's another thing the system tries to do is tries to keep us distracted, like bread and circuses,
Yeah.
like we was talking about earlier, like and infiltrate that circus, right? The bread and circus is to keep you distracted, so you won't pick up the book that's given a political analysis to make you like look at your own life differently, look at your community differently. They don't want you doing that. They don't want you doing that. They want to keep you, like caught up, in social media, looking at like, silly things and, comedy and whatnot. And again, I'm gonna apply math again. There's nothing wrong with comedy. There's nothing wrong with entertainment. The question becomes, what percentage of our lives and what percentage of the energy and time that we have are we dedicating to those things? A lot of us are dedicating like 95% of our energy and time to those things. That is a problem, right? It doesn't mean that we should never laugh, we should never joke, we should never dance, we should never hang out, we should never chill. It doesn't mean that. The question is the percentages. Like, what ratio of percentage, proportion of your time are you using for that? It's 24 hours in a day. How many hours in a day are you using and dedicating toward that?
Yeah.
Those that control systems, they know that if they can keep us, so many people, millions of people, dedicating like 95%, 95% of their time to things that are just frivolous and just leisurely activities, we ain't never going to change nothing. Nothing is ever going to change. Their control and their power is safe, right?
Yeah.
So I want to be very clear, because a lot of times, people that talk similar to the way I talk, like, oftentimes I think they're misinterpreted as if like, oh, you just want people to just be mad all the time and be serious all the time. Like, nah, you shouldn't do that neither. You need to have some fun. You need to relax, you kick back, hang out with your peoples, with your folks and all that. Dance, sing, whatever you like to do, hang out, chill. You need to do that too. But the question becomes, again, back to the math, what percentage of your time are you dedicating toward that? It's just like when you sit down with a financial planner. Financial planner going to kick it to you like this. Okay, out of your income, your monthly income, this percentage should go to entertainment.
Mm.
This percentage of your money should go toward your housing expenses. This percentage should go toward clothing. This percentage should go toward your utility bills. This percentage should go toward your car. This percentage goes toward credit card bills, credit card debt, whatever, right? We got to do that with our lives. Like, how much time are you spending? How much time are you spending? You know what I'm saying? But they got us, first of all, they don't even want us thinking like that, right? They just want us to just feel good all the time. You can't feel good all the time. You got to do some work.
Yeah.
That has to be like the amount of partying, hanging out, chilling, whatever that we do should be commensurate with the amount of real work we're doing, right? The amount of effort we're doing to build community, change systems, improve systems. You know what I'm saying? You can't turn up all the time, because if you turn up all the time, then you're not turning up. That's another mathematical concept. Think of a graph. If the graph is constantly going up, it's not a turn up. The turn up is when you at an inflection point on the graph and you stop going down and you start going up.
Yeah, it makes sense.
So it's not really a turn up if you always turning up.
Yeah.
If you always turning up, you just up.
Yeah.
It's not a turn up.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So again, that's another way to, again, bridge the gap. Make that connection. If people want to be out, you partying, drinking Don Julio, you know what I'm saying? Like, doing whatever. And I'm not saying you shouldn't do that. I mean, I do that.
Just don't do it every day.
Exactly. Right? You got to have balance.
Have you ever heard what you just said, that right there? It's not a turn up if you turn up all the time. Did you hear that somewhere before? That shit would look great on a t-shirt. That shit needs to be on a t-shirt. It's not a turn up if you turn up all the time.
No, I think that might be a
bar.
That might just be a bar.
Oh, that's somebody's bar.
No, I think that's mine. I don't think I heard nobody say that.
See, the way you view the world through the lens that you see it through, the analytical, and this is again not a condemnation of other people. I just don't think the majority of the world sees it that way. I also see it the exact same as you. It's like seeing the world through that lens is like comforting to me, because I feel like you have an amount of control over that, because like anything, you have some control over it. But like society kind of injects you with this feel good feeling to the point where you're always feeling good. And I think because people receive so much of that, when they're not getting that, they don't know how to make themselves feel good. They don't know what to do. They don't have the tools, the resources to do that. And I'm trying to figure that out myself, because I'm such an analytical person right now. It's like, I can't watch football. Like, in my body, I feel like I can't give 3 hours, because I'm doing the math. I'm like, wait, 3 hours every Sunday till I die? Yeah. That's too much time. You notice?
Yeah.
I need to be doing something else with that time. I don't want to say even if he's my son, like he's the lowest rung, but I should be spending that time with my son, because that football is not paying me, And even if it was paying me, even those players, they have to figure out how they spend their time, quality of time with their family. So for me to just sit around and watch football till I die, I'm not doing it. I just can't. And that's just because I'm analytical. When other people, not condemning or judging, but that escape for them, I look at like outside entertainment is like escapism to me
Yeah,
because I feel like I have all the tools and resources to make myself feel good. If I never looked at another video or ate another great food or did anything, I know how to make me feel good for
yeah,
sure. Run. There's a million things you can do
true,
within
true.
reading, all types of things that you can do that's not entertainment that's being forced down your throat.
Yeah, and I think to your point also is that a lot of times when people are confronted with this like idea of revamping or changing their lives and their
Hmm.
lifestyles, they think that there has to be a drastic change. When you think of like the collective, think of things from a collective standpoint. If 1,000 people just change their lives by like 5%, like let's say like okay, like you're the person that want to turn up all the time. All right, so let's say you typically go out 4 days a week. All right, maybe you just go out 3 days.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And then one day, stay in the house, maybe read something. You know what I'm saying? Pace yourself. Pick out a book. Just start doing some reading. One day a week. And that represents a small change, but if it's consistent over time, it's going to add up. And then imagine what happens when like 1,000 people are doing that, right? So and again, because it's about the collective. Because a lot of times, I think this is another thing that discourages people from making changes in their lifestyles, and especially and also see this is why history. Well, I would say not just history, but historiography. So historiography is like what parts of the story do we choose to tell, and how do we teach the history? Oftentimes, when we learn about these like Black freedom fighters and these Black revolutionaries, they're represented to us like they're like superheroes, right? There's not enough conversation about the communities of people they were a part of and what bred them and what helped develop
Hmm.
them. So people be looking at them like, and I think we all guilty of it to a certain degree. It's like because we develop like I have intellectual heroes. I got revolutionary heroes, right? But even that can be problematic if you don't think about it in the proper context, because then a lot of people will hear you talk about them and yet they sit there in the back of their mind, they're like, it's almost like somebody sitting in a math class with a really good math teacher, and they're like, I could never do that because they don't have that confidence.
Hmm.
But then it's like when you're talking about somebody like a Malcolm X, right? It might be like the way we perceive his life and who he was, it may not have been actually how it was.
Yeah,
So
probably
you're
wasn't.
thinking I could never do what he did, right? Not knowing that like he was a brother that did extraordinary things, but I think more of it might have been him just his consistency and his commitment, right? And you can be consistent and be committed. It might even take work, but you can do that. But a lot of times like people get discouraged from like changing because of the way that people are marketed to them. And we kind of sometimes we might market people in kind of like um, unrealistic ways. Like we hear about like Marcus Garvey and all these people who should be honored and should be placed on a certain status. Excuse me. Um, but I think we gotta and I think that's why biographical information is so important too. You gotta read about people and like how they really were, you know, and not let that discourage you. Because it's like, I mean, there are people like, I mentioned the Black Panther Party earlier. You might know about Huey P. Newton. You might know about Bobby Seale, right? Kathleen Cleaver, Elaine Brown, people like that. But there's a lot of other people whose names you don't know. But them other people whose names you don't know, as far as being part of a collective, or Fred Hampton, you might have heard about Fred Hampton,
Yeah.
right? Out in Chicago. But what about the people whose names you don't know? But they was helping to run the offices. They was helping with the free breakfast program, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning so they could get to the breakfast program at 5, cook the food up, get the food out to the children when they come in, make sure everybody cool, having the conversations, providing the political education, providing the cultural education. A lot of them people you don't know their names. You know Asada Shakur's name, but a lot of people don't know their names. But those people are also very significant, right?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
when somebody learns about the more well-known figures, I just want anybody watching this, not to think like, well, nah, I can never be like them, so therefore it's no point. I'm gonna just just keep turning up. You know, you could be the person that maybe don't get the limelight or don't get the spotlight, but you're still very important because it's about the collective. It's not about the individual. And I think that is the mistake that we make sometimes when we want to educate people about movements, about organizations, um, about individuals. Like we put a lot of emphasis on the individual, and we got to talk more. We got to talk more about the collective. Even the people who may be nameless.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a Idol worship. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that's just like a thing that we do as humans. Um, yeah, that sounds like an idea for a great idea for a movie. Honestly, I don't think I've ever seen a movie like that that tells that story that you're talking about. The story underneath the story about the people that helping out. It's like I think personally that the people under are the most important part because it's like the coach. You know, the coach he led them to the team, but without those pieces, without the delegation and everything that that
Yeah.
person did, you don't achieve it. It just doesn't happen. You know,
Kwame,
without the rest of the team.
Kwame Ture, another one of my intellectual heroes.
Hmm.
My youngest son is named after Kwame Ture. Kind of put that into perspective for me. Listening to one of his old lectures from the 1980s, he was talking about um, the importance of community and thinking about the community that people were a part of. He was the example of George Washington. He was like, we learn about George Washington. He's on the $1 bill, 25-cent piece, and this Revolutionary War hero and all this and that. But what he, kind of jokingly, matter of fact, this might be, I can't remember if this is on the Boogie Down Productions Edutainment album from 1990. It might be one of the interludes on there. If it's not, it was online somewhere. But he was saying like put George Washington in Valley Forge on the Delaware River somewhere by himself. What's gonna happen to him?
Yeah,
They're gonna line him up.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
He's
over.
done for.
Yeah.
He ain't gonna be no hero.
Mm-hmm.
He's able to be a hero because he got an army behind him.
Yeah.
But don't nobody talk about the people that was in the army,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So he could be a hero because he got an army behind him, And so we think about, well, speaking of George Washington, as Black people, and again, this is part of cultural relevancy. We have to acknowledge that he was a slaveholder. So for me, as through an African centered perspective, first and foremost, before he's the military general, military hero, whatever, of the so-called Revolutionary War, I call it the War for Independence because there's nothing revolutionary about it. As Malcolm X said, revolutions overturn systems. The white boys wasn't trying to overturn those systems. They was trying to stop sending money back home to King George. They just wanted to keep all the money here that they was making off of our backs, off our ancestors' backs from slavery. They was trying to keep all the bread here, right? So it wasn't revolutionary, it was a war for independence. So they'd be independent of having to send money back over to England, right? So through an African-centered lens, we look at him as a slaveholder first because that was more of the impact that he had on us. So he could be a president, whatever, right here in Philly. He could be a president. He could be a military general, cool. But that's secondary or tertiary. Primarily, he's a slaveholder. That's what I care about. That's what I taught my children when they was young. You know what I'm saying? Like, listen, he's a slaveholder.
Yeah.
His President's Day coming up. You're going to learn about him, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I remember me and my son, who's 19 now, shout out to Nasim. He's a sophomore at Morgan State, doing his thing. I remember he was a young boy, like 4 or 5 years old. We was driving to New York to go visit family, visit my grandmother probably, and we crossing the George Washington Bridge. That's a teachable moment. Oh, Nasim, you know who George Washington is? He was like 3 or 4 years old. He didn't know who he was. Tell him who George Washington was. Number one, he was a slaveholder.
Yeah.
He also was the first president of the United States. Fought in the, so-called Revolutionary War, War for Independence. But first and foremost, slaveholder.
I think that matters. I think that's very important that you create that context for him. Like that's very important because obviously he's going to remember that. Like that's the thing that we need to know about him first.
It does. And,
Yeah.
and you know for me, what I really think about is this.
Yeah, that's important.
Children are intelligent. People are intelligent, right? But a lot of times we lack the information in order that we need to make informed decisions. So
Always.
it is, if this man was a slaveholder, would have sold your great grandmom, traded her for a barrel of molasses, right? Did not respect her humanity, at all, right? But then you look, okay, it's 2024. We live in America. Huh. There's a holiday for this man. There are schools named after this man. There are streets named after this man. He's on the $1 bill. He's on the 25-cent piece. So the people that are in charge of this nation and this society, they elevate him to a certain level. Yet I know how he felt about my people. So then now I can mathematically look at the situation and I can start to draw some conclusions. How should I view this society? But if I never learn who he really was, I'm not going to see no contradiction.
Yeah.
Because now I'm looking at this society. I'm looking at this society sideways now. So now when somebody comes along, now because I've had that education, now when somebody comes along talking about nationalism, talking about Pan-Africanism, Now I'm like, you know what? That actually makes sense. Because look around me. Oh, it's Jefferson Street. Who's Jefferson? Thomas Jefferson. Another president, another slaveholder, another rapist.
Yeah.
Right? So these people that run this society, they love these men. These are their heroes. These are their heroes. So if these are their heroes, it's like you talked about physics. Two objects can't occupy the same space at the same time. You can't be cool with me and cool with them at the same time.
Yeah.
You can't. That's basic math.
Yeah.
We can't both be cool at the same time. Just like when, like the young brothers understand this. Young brothers, young girls understand this. It's like, yo, I'm beefing with him. Why you hanging out with him? How we cool if I'm beefing with him and y'all hanging out? Now I'm looking at you sideways. I can't trust you now.
Yeah.
It's the same concept.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think analytically that makes sense, but because, again, I believe that you can't quantify feelings, I probably wouldn't apply that to the situation, only because maybe where you're at is different. You might be surrounded by more black people. At least me in my life, I wouldn't have any friends. You know what I mean?
That's the
Like,
that's the challenge.
I don't know anybody.
But at least, but like you said, it's being analytical. So you're also considering the consequences.
Yeah.
Right? And you're considering the consequences of, okay, well, what if I do take this stance?
Yeah.
Then what are the consequences going to be?
Yeah,
right?
You're out.
But sometimes, like, even if you know the information and you know the reality, right? But at least you, like, at a minimum, you should know, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to
Of
just,
course.
well, I don't even know. I'm just going along hunky dory, like, everything is cool.
You can make an informed decision.
Yeah, and sometimes we make decisions that that are more expedient, right? Based on the circumstances that we find ourselves in, right? So we might have to do some things that we in other circumstances would not otherwise do.
Yeah.
But we're doing it because we're limited in terms of what our options are. But at least we know.
Yeah.
Right? Because if you don't know, then you just like, okay, you're just going along like everything is cool. Like, hey, George Washington, you're a good guy.
Yeah.
Chopped down the cherry tree, never told a lie. All that type of stuff. You buy into that propaganda without knowing the reality, then it's like, it's almost like, and that's another thing too. Like, that's a challenge about learning. When you really start learning the things that those that control the society don't want us to learn, it's almost like, you can't unlearn it. So you got to make a choice. And I think that's something that people understand. You got to make a choice. It's just like when, people decide to go hit the block. When you're a young brother, you're like 11, 12 years old, you stay on the porch. You looking up at the corner, you seeing them, they over there, they getting money. You think they get money. And you make that decision to come out that porch. Once you come out the porch, you in it. Once you in it, you got to deal with it. You got to deal with the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
It's similar to learning. Because once you learn, you can't unlearn it. You can't unknow it. Because now I know. So now we back to Fanon. Back to what the Fanon was talking about. Once you know the truth, you only got two choices. You're either going to uphold it and move accordingly, or you're going to lie to yourself every day and act like you don't know no better. So it's like, it's not sweet. So I don't want to romanticize it. Like, contemplating on that has helped me to be more patient with people, because I understand that, like, this life is not for everybody. It's not. And I think for me, it's even easier because I come from a space of privilege, because I was born into this. Like, my parents was on this wave, like, when I was an infant, like early 1980s. I was born in 1980. My parents was on this. My mom was at Hunter College in New York, in Manhattan. She took classes with Dr. John Henrik Clark. He was one of her professors. Donna Richards, who now is known as Marimba Ani, she was one of her professors. So that's, I was born into that community, so I'm in the house, I lived in New York at the time, when I was a newborn, we got the map of Africa on the wall. We got the big poster of Marcus Garvey on the wall. So I'm born into that.
Yeah,
so for me, it was normal. So it wasn't no, like, I didn't have to go, like a lot of people, I didn't have to go to college and take my first African American studies course and then get, politicized.
Yeah.
Right? I was politicized from birth. So I strayed away from it, but I came back, like, kind of like the story from the Bible, the prodigal son. Like, I strayed away because, through a certain portion of my life, I'm like, well, that stuff ain't cool. I don't see this stuff as cool. And my friends really ain't on that pro-black stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But when I became an adult, I got back on it because I got in connection with some elders that reminded me of who I really was. And I was like, nah, this makes sense. This makes more sense to, take this approach to the world and to life. You know what I'm saying? But I do understand, like, when people don't necessarily want to embrace that because it's not easy, but then we get into the issue of, again, mathematically doing an analysis. Choose your heart. It's not easy to just be a black person in America that just wants to fit in, don't make no waves. I just want to assimilate or integrate into the society. Mm-hmm. That's not easy neither. The cops will still shoot you.
Yeah.
So the question becomes, when you choose your heart, what are you going to choose? You're going to choose to go a more nationalist, independent type route, or you're going to go the route where you just try to fit in, right? I tend to look at things in terms of what has the larger potential outcome or the greater potential outcome. I think that we gain more as a collective by trying to be independent. It's not going to be easy. I would never sit here and romanticize it for nobody. It would take a lot of work. I mean, our ancestors have been trying to do that since we've been here under bondage, But I think it's worth it to at least push in that direction, and try to get people to see the logic behind it. And then again, that takes us back to mathematics, because math shows you the logic. The math shows you the logic. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we do this, this is gonna happen. So why don't we go over here and try to do this? You know what I'm saying? Like, so yeah, everything is mathematical. Like you said earlier, the whole world is mathematics. Everything is mathematical.
I think that actually makes sense too. Just trying to create a picture of what you're describing. It seems like the resistance to assimilation, or what is easy, has helped you develop a lot, more into who you are right now, into this very person. And luckily you were born in a culturally rich environment that planted that seed in you. Whereas, speaking for myself, I'm just a single black mom that, she's literally, her life is just about trying to get along, with zero resistance. So, obviously that's going to be the vibe and energy that I'm going to, walk through the world with too.
And see, here's another thing that those of us in the so-called conscious community have to take account of, is that a lot of people weren't exposed to the things that we was exposed to.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like life is hard. You know what I'm saying? Like, a lot of people are just trying to survive. So they may not have the time. And I get it. Like, you may not have the time to read the philosophy and opinions of Marcus Garvey. You working 3 jobs just to keep a roof over your head.
Yeah.
Right? Mm-hmm. But once we recognize that as those members of the so-called conscious community, it becomes our responsibility to create infrastructure and to create ways where those sisters and brothers that are just trying to get by and just provide food, clothes, and shelter for themselves and their family, to provide convenient and meaningful ways for them to be able to learn some different things, right? And that's our responsibility, right? A lot of times, and this is something I'm gonna tell you what I don't like. A lot of times, what a lot of people in the the conscious community, what we do is, and I've probably been guilty of this myself in the past. I try to not do this now. We place too much responsibility on those that don't know any better or haven't been exposed to that information that we've been exposed to. Like, we might have read 50 books. So all this stuff makes perfect sense. They didn't read the 50 books.
Yep.
We read the 50 books. Because we read the 50 books, that means it's on us to create the institutions that will then be able to serve the people in a different way. But for now, for the most part, I think people are doing the best they can with the resources that they have. If we want people to move differently, we got to create something so that they can move differently. But oftentimes we just sit back and just be mad because they didn't do what we did. Why would they do what we did? Why would they think that makes sense? Everybody is a product of their environment. Everybody's a product of their education and their socialization process. So if you want people to move different, you got to create something so that they can move different. So that gets back to the whole, infiltrate the circus. That whole concept, infiltrate the circus. You can't just be player hating from the sideline, just sitting back, looking at them black people over there. Look what they doing. Look what they doing. Look what they doing. Like, okay, we see what they're doing. You want them to do something different? You got to create something so that they can do something different. You can't just sit back and also, that whole alienation, the alienating people, overly scrutinizing people, that's not going to make them change. That's not, oh, damn, you know what?
Yeah.
You talking bad about me because I'm not like, I'm turning up too much and I'm not, reading books, and I'm not studying my history. So you know what? That actually makes me want to go study and read my history. No, the opposite. They're going to double down. They're going to dig their heels in.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
Yep.
we should be intelligent enough to understand human nature well enough to know that that's going to be the outcome. So if we really got love for our people, we would build something. You got to build something. So this is, so me with understanding that and recognizing that over time is another reason why, a contributing factor to why I've built all this math, because all this math is a space where our people can come online on a YouTube channel, or whether it's through math tutoring, but you can get Black history in the math videos. You can get math instruction. Like I want our people to learn math, so I can't just sit back and be like, y'all need to go learn math. No, you got to build something where they can come and learn math. If you build it, they will come. So, and now we got the internet now. It's 2024. We can leverage it. Like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we didn't have this. We didn't have these resources. You would have had to have a room and a building, have a class. We meet every week. People have to physically travel there and meet there. You know what I'm saying? Or go to somebody's house where everybody can meet up. Now we got to leverage our resources and leverage these tools. And we can do that. So nowadays, like, if I want people to learn math, create an institution where they can come learn math. So that's what I've done. I want our people to learn our history. So I created an institution where they can, while you're learning math, you can learn some of your history, right? At the same time. So that's what we got to do if we're serious.
Yeah, yeah, that's what you're doing. I mean, that's what attracted me to what you got going on. Like, I learned through this process that speaking to people that like have a real passion and purpose for what they do, it makes for a real entertaining conversation and a good conversation, and just good to give back to the people. Props to you too. That was a hell of a segue that you just did there. The way you just linked that to the all this math thing, that was real special there. I like that. I was watching one of your clips the other day, and this is going to show my suburban upbringing. I was looking at one of your equations, and it was basically I applied an old formula that they used back in the day. It's PEMDAS.
Okay.
But you know where I'm from. What's the acronym for that? What do you teach?
So I'm not a fan of PEMDAS these days. I like PED. I don't even like the P, but if I say anything, I say PED, I say PEM or DAS.
Okay.
Because a major mistake, a very popular mistake people make is they think that you should always which actually is logical. It's a logical mistake, a logical fallacy, maybe even I might say. Not sure, but because the M always comes before the D in PEMDAS, that gives the impression that you should always multiply before you divide, but you should not. There's a detail within the order of operations that states that multiplication or division, depending upon which comes first as you move from left to right. Because again, math is a language.
Yeah.
You're reading the problem from left to right.
Yeah.
Right. But I don't even like to say PEMDAS really, if I can avoid it. I prefer order of operations, because order of operations, like PEMDAS is a mnemonic device, which is meant to help young people remember all the steps.
Yeah.
Right. However, here's the problem. It's almost like I could teach you let's say I'm teaching you something. I don't know what it might be, but then I give you a shortcut. I'll teach it to you the long way first, right? But then I'm gonna give you the shortcut to help you to remember the long way, right? The problem is that in a lot of school systems, people are cutting corners. They're not teaching it the long way first. They're going straight to the shortcut. PEMDAS is a shortcut. But then if you just learn PEMDAS, that's why people out here thinking you should always multiply before you divide, because you didn't learn the longer definition, which is multiplication or division, depending upon which comes first as you read the problem from left to right.
Yeah.
That's the long version, but that's the accurate long version, right? Also with the P in PEMDAS, which stands for parentheses, parentheses is an example of a grouping symbol, meaning we could be dealing with brackets or braces, right? So any grouping symbol any terms or expressions that are within grouping symbols should be dealt with first, right? But again, people get caught up in the P, parentheses. So they see parentheses, they think, oh, I'm supposed to do this first. Here's another problem. Again, math is a language. In certain situations, a parentheses is used as a grouping symbol. In other situations, parentheses represents multiplication. If you got a number next to a set of parentheses, that means you multiply by that number by whatever's inside the parentheses. It might just be one number inside the parentheses. So people see that parentheses and think, oh, PEMDAS, the P is first. That means I got to multiply first. Nah, it might be division before the multiplication.
Yeah.
If you multiply first, you violating the order of operations. But again, a lot of this is addressed if we learn it the long way. A lot of people are cutting corners.
Yeah.
A lot of math teachers don't really know math.
Yeah.
Not at least not when I say don't really know math, not to a deep enough level where they can really explain these concepts effectively to students. They're going straight to PEMDAS.
Yeah, and that sounds like a hard concept to explain to like a third grader. I feel like I might have learned that in like second or third grade or something like that. I don't actually know, but I wanted to tell you what the acronym was, how they, when in school, in public school in their suburbs, it's please excuse my dear Aunt Sally.
Yeah, that's how I learned
You
it.
heard that? Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's how I learned
Yeah,
it.
please
Yeah,
excuse my dear Aunt Sally. Yeah.
because it helps you to remember the letters.
Yeah, that's, I mean,
Yeah.
all these years later, I remember. So I did one of your questions and I might have got it wrong now. I don't know if I actually saw the ending answer. It was a recent one. I might have got it wrong based on what you're saying if I did something out of order, but I don't know.
Well, if you followed along, if you watched the whole video, the correct answer was at the end.
Yeah, I don't think I saw it all the way to the end.
Okay.
I just assumed that I had it right based on what I knew about it.
And probably
I think the answer was 5 or 2.
probably that video was probably based on a problem that, we was on Facebook tussling about, because that's the thing. Like,
Yeah, it's that one. That's the one.
Yeah.
So
'Cause
what was the answer to that? Was
I
it
can't
2
even
or 5?
remember, because
okay.
it's a handful of them. Like, because
Yeah.
every time there's a problem that gets posted and people start to arguing, get the beefing in the comments and everything, I'll be like, I've been like, all right, let me do this. Let me do a video on this.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Because then I do the video, and then what I do is I go back into the conversation in the post, and I just drop the video link, because that's hopefully it's a way for me to get more subscribers.
Yeah.
And also somebody can learn something. But yeah, I can't even remember.
Yeah. Okay.
But order of operations now. But I will say this though too, in all fairness, because I've talked to some other mathematicians about this. A lot of those problems are only.
Do you mind if we look it up while you talk?
No, go ahead.
Okay?
No, it's cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
A lot of those problems they become an issue because of how math is a language, because of how the problem is written. There are other ways to write problems that would eliminate, I guess some people would call it ambiguity. I don't want to call it ambiguity, because if you know the order of operations, then it's not ambiguous. But a lot of people don't really know the order of operations, and they make assumptions based on how something looks, based upon what they're accustomed to seeing, right? But if you follow the order of operations strictly, right, and you're disciplined in terms of how you follow the order of operations, then it shouldn't be ambiguous, right? But like, for example, like if you put the first part, of the problem in parentheses itself, then that would eliminate, some of the possibility to get it incorrect or to do it incorrectly.
I got you.
But what happens is those problems are created to test a person's ability, to test whether they really know the order of operations and if they can commit themselves to it. Because like a lot of teachers, like, if it's me, I'm like, the only way I would write a problem like that is if I want to test to see how good you are. I'm trying to challenge you on purpose.
Yeah, so you just answered my question there, because I wondered that too about math sometimes. I remember wondering this back in the day, like why they ask tricky questions, like why not just make it, straightforward? Why does it got to be tricky? But I guess you just explained it.
Just to challenge you, what I'm saying? Just to see if, you're battle tested, just to see test your, your level of thinking, your level of understanding, I think that's definitely what's going on with that. Because different types of problems can challenge different. And again, in terms of math being about problem solving, or math being synonymous with problem solving, when you think of it that way, the more difficult math problems, it gives you practice at solving more difficult problems, which is transferable, because then when you're in your everyday life and you have difficult problems with a significant other, with a relative, with a friend, with an enemy, with somebody in traffic, with, you got a traffic ticket, you got to go before the judge, you got to go to traffic court, You know, you got to figure some stuff out. Maybe you got like a child support issue or a child custody issue with your baby mom or whoever, right? These are difficult problems. And the same way, again, the content might be different. The content of the problem might be different, but the same way that you approach a difficult problem in a geometry classroom when you're 15 years old in 10th grade, right, is the same way you got to approach that difficult problem in your everyday life when you're 25.
I agree.
It's the same way. So if you have practice, this is another issue. A lot of us, we can't solve our problems because we don't have enough practice dealing with problems. And a lot of us, we shy away. We fold like paper when we have a problem. We run away from problems.
Yeah.
Instead of like standing 10 toes down and saying like, all right, now we about to solve this. We're going to resolve this. We're going to figure this out. Right. And then you might not be able to figure it out on the spot, but you might have to gather some information. You might have to gather some resources. You might have to do this, do that, whatever. A lot of us just shy away. And like you mentioned earlier, escapism. A lot of us just escape from problems. That leads to a lot of us trying to turn up all the time. Because when you turning up, again, you throwing back shots at tequila, you're not thinking about your problems.
Yeah. And more problems.
And and what happens with problems when you allow them to persist? It grows.
Yeah, compound.
It compounds, exactly.
Yeah.
It
More
compounds
math,
and grows.
right?
Or math,
Yeah.
compound interest.
Yeah, right? Everything is
One's in a row.
math. It's crazy, right?
So it just grows. So, but if we learn how to solve problems, and if we think about Algebra 1 class as a problem-solving class, geometry as a problem-solving class, pre-calculus, calculus, statistics, they all problem-solving classes, then you'll have a different appreciation for it. And then, because you look at a lot of people's lives, and like a lot of people that have certain complaints about their existence are due to the problems in their lives. And we're human beings. We're always going to have problems. You won't be able to live a problem-free life. I don't think that's possible, right? The question is, how do you deal with the problems when they present themselves?
Yeah.
Do you know how to solve the problems? Or do you just know how to like try to sweep it under the rug as best you can and try to escape from the realization that you have that problem? So then that's when you get into, then you start drinking too much. You're trying to avoid thinking about these problems. You start using drugs, start getting high. Why? Because you're trying to avoid these problems. You know why? In part because you never learned how to solve the problem in order to eliminate it.
Yep.
You know, and it doesn't, and also in all fairness, it doesn't mean that you're always going to do the right thing. But at least you take a mathematical, analytical approach to it, and you weigh your options and you consider, okay, this might be a better alternative, or that might be a better alternative. You might still do the wrong thing. You might still default to, some emotional feelings, but at least you went through that process. Because we're, at the end of the day, we're humans.
Yeah.
We might still not do it's times when listen, I know what I should do, but I ain't about to do that.
Yeah. And even if you're doing the wrong thing, as long as you're working towards resolving it, you're still doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Like a problem, you could have the wrong answer, but you could be close to the right answer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's helpful still.
Can I say something else too?
Yeah.
And as parents also, that's another thing. As parents, our children are constantly watching us, and our children are learning from us, right? There's like this unwritten, unspoken curriculum, right? So much of what we do as adults, how much of it did we inherit from just watching our parents, watching our grandparents, watching the old heads, watching the elders, watching our aunts and uncles? They didn't know they was teaching us, right? It was organic learning. It was an organic learning opportunity, just watching them, just hanging out with them, just seeing like, okay, when they go into the kitchen, they do this. When they take some out the refrigerator, they do this. When they get into the car, they do this. A lot of these habits we just pick up. So imagine if problem solving was a habit that we have, and our children view that instead of just, they view, parents just get mad, cussing somebody out, hanging up on somebody, just being angry. Imagine if they saw us taking a systematic, methodical approach and just sitting back and just remaining cool, calm, and collected and just sizing up the situation, right? And then trying to work toward a solution.
Always.
They see that, like young people seeing that, watching, just peeping at, instead of just, damn, my mom about to cuss this lady out.
Yeah.
My dad about to cuss this guy. My dad about to fight this guy.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Sometimes, hey, that might be the solution. You might need to get physical with somebody. Listen, let's step outside for a minute, right? You might have to do that, but a lot of times that might not be the solution. But for a lot of people, that's the default because they don't know how to problem solve. So again, all roads lead to math. My argument is this, and I've said this, I'm going to keep repeating this for anybody watching. When you study math, you're studying problem solving. You're learning problem solving. So that's a number one. That's a response to somebody saying, "Why I got to learn this? How's this going to help me in life?" And then when people say, "I'm not going to use this," okay, there's a certain group of people that control the society that don't want you to use it.
Yeah.
Because like Amos Wilson said, the problems of the black community are a multi-billion-dollar industry. So once members of the black community begin to develop the skills to be able to solve our problems, what happens to that money? What happens to that multi-billion-dollar industry? It goes away because now we're solving our problems. So now we don't need this this white controlled nonprofit organization to come in and like save us and create programs for us. No, we create our own programs because we know how to solve our problems now.
Yeah.
Right. So the math class is meant, and the math problems and the examples are meant to help your brain develop problem solving ability. And a lot of us don't have that problem solving ability. So when you sit there and say like, yo, I'm never going to use this, you playing right into the game. That's the trap. They want you to think that so that you can be manipulated and controlled for the rest of your life.
Yeah, that's interesting, right? Do you think that this is going to be a real long question. Do you think that there's an opportunity to mold what type of child you're dealing with there earlier, whether they look to problem solve through an emotional response or an analytical response? Because the emotional response is, like you said, that's more beneficial to the society in every way, whether it be in the job field or you respond to an altercation emotionally and now you're in the prison pipeline. You know what I mean? Like, do you think that's early? Because I feel like, for me, like sometimes when people ask me about me, like I feel like it was just luck, you know, because I have a brother and, you know, we're different, you know, like he's more emotional and I'm just logical, math, numbers. I don't get mad, like, because it doesn't make sense to me to be mad, you know, so like I'm always weighing and measuring everything. I don't even move without it. And that could be problematic through life, again, dealing with emotions. But that thing you described about being out on the block, that's presented to everybody, no matter where you're at, suburbs too. And for me, I'm looking at the big homie and I'm like, I don't know, bro. Like I'm doing the math on it, and the amount of years you spent in jail divided by out on the street, like you could have worked at McDonald's and made the same, you know, the math just don't math. I think if had I ever seen someone that was successful at it, maybe I might have partook. But I personally, and for the most part, we know that game, the story ends dead or jail. You know what I mean? That's how that game ends. No one, the other thing is a fallacy. I don't even know if that's real. I don't know if there is a retirement program for people that partake in that lifestyle. So it just didn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. But to some kids, I think in the moment when they're presented with that, it might make sense to them because they don't have all the information or the tools to really discern what really makes sense here. You know?
I would agree with that. And in terms of like it becoming that lifestyle becoming appealing to children, the streets can be very sexy, especially to like a young brother, but if he doesn't feel like he has other options. And a lot of times, again, it comes back to math deficiency, right? If you have proficiency in mathematics and you're in school, then you have success academically. So if you have academic success, you start to think that, okay, well, there are different outcomes and I have different opportunities. But if you have consistent deficiency in mathematics, then you're probably going to have deficiency in other subjects as well. And then you start to adopt this stance and this position like, yo, school ain't for me. School ain't my thing. But the reality is like school would be your thing if you were appropriately taught mathematics. So if you're appropriately taught mathematics, now you start thinking like, all right, well, I got this option. I can go here. I can do this. I can do that. I can go to college. I can do all these things. So now when somebody, even if somebody does offer you that opportunity, like, yo, come on the block with us. It's like, nah, I'm cool. Because you start to weigh like it's not worth the risk. Now, of course, some people might say, okay, you know, I want the best of both worlds. So I'm going to college and I'm good in school and I got good grades. I'm still going to come to the block, you know, because whatever. But at least, you know, for some people, that becomes less appealing. For some people, they feel like that's the only option I have, right? So the streets become real sexy. But it's like, but some people are like, nah, I'm not trying. What's sexy to me is going to college and getting this degree so I can become a computer engineer or an electrical engineer or a mechanical engineer or a civil engineer or a computer scientist or a doctor. I really want to be an anesthesiologist or something like that. And it's realistic. And it's actually realistic. It's not just, well, I looked up the salaries for anesthesiologists and they're making like $800,000 a year, close to $1 million. I'm trying to get a bag, right? But then it's actually realistic. Like, no, I got real math skills. So that's actually realistic. I can go to college. I got colleges that would give me scholarship money. and I could go and then proceed to go to medical, take an MCAT, and then go to medical school and go through the whole process, right? That becomes realistic. In the absence of math skills, a lot of that is because math is the gatekeeper. A lot of that becomes unrealistic. So then the streets become very sexy, very seductive. Couple that with an impressionable brain with the frontal lobe not fully developed, right? I'm constantly feeding myself a constant diet of cocaine rap music that glorifies the experience of being a drug dealer.
Yeah.
Right? Regardless of what these guys want to say, well, I'm just telling my story. All right. Yeah, but you pick and choose what stories you want to tell.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You know, and these young kids are listening to that, and then they start to think, you know, it's like an echo chamber. It's all these, like in my neighborhood, I see people in my neighborhood doing this. I'm listening to the music. My favorite rappers was doing this.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, this is all I know, right? And in the absence of academic success, formal academic success, you know, and I want to make a distinction, be clear with that too, because a lot of people say, well, oh, it's a lot of people that's good at math. No, I'm talking about formal academics, being able to go into a room, sit down with an algebra textbook and solve equations, right? And understand that. And I'm not talking about, yeah, because people will be like, oh, you know, a lot of people that sell dope, they good at math too. Okay, that's fine. I'm talking about formal academic performance. Can you solve a geometric proof in a geometry class? Can you tell me why this angle is equal to that angle, and there's a transversal that cuts them, and you know they alternate exterior angles, whatever? Can you tell me that? You know, how do I know that these two triangles are similar?
Yeah, are you
right?
proficient at math?
Yeah,
I get it.
formal academic mathematics, right? Pre-calculus, right? Tell me about the end behavior of this polynomial function, right? So that's what I'm talking about, because that's what gets you to the next level, to become the engineer, to become the doctor, right? And there's a lot of STEM programs, and I like this proliferation of STEM programs, but I want to say something about that. I have a concern that there's a lot of money being thrown at STEM programs, and a lot of people are creating STEM programs, which are great. Application is very important. We talked about that earlier with the word problems, application. So if you're in a STEM program, you're building bridges with popsicle sticks and straws, and, you know, building robots and remote control cars, that's great. We need more of that. However, I don't want the STEM program to become a replacement for mathematics instruction, because what ends up happening is we still set the children up for failure, because they're getting exposure to science, technology, and engineering. But then when it comes time, they say, oh, I want to be an engineer. Okay, cool. All right. It comes time for you to go to college, and you're like, okay, what's your SAT score like? You take the SAT, take the ACT. You can't solve equations. You can't come into a room, sit down at a table and solve a system of equations. You can't solve a quadratic equation. You can't simplify expressions with exponents. You never learned the actual math. You never learned the algebra. But you was in the STEM program building bridges and, you know, building remote control cars, which is great. But it was not supplemented with actual mathematics instruction. And I have a concern that in a lot of spaces, the actual application is being used as a replacement for mathematics, because they're like, oh, the kids don't like math, the kids hate math, so let's let them do fun stuff.
Yeah.
You can't always do fun stuff, right? The fun stuff, the so-called fun stuff, has to be supplemented by the actual mathematical work. And that's a concern I have, because like everybody got a STEM program, STEM this, STEM that, and I'm like, all right, that's cool. But do they also know how to solve equations? Because, you know, this is going to introduce them to science, technology, and engineering. That's wonderful. I'm all for that. I want more of that. We need more of that energy. However, when it comes time for them to actually compete to go to college and earn a degree in one of those fields, they're not going to be able to, because they still never learned the math. So then it just became like playtime. Like they was just playing around. But if we serious, we want them to be building bridges. We want them to be building remote control cars. We want them to be designing robots. We want them doing that. But we also want them to be able to do pre-calculus and be able to speak intelligently about pre-calculus. We want them to be able to do calculus and speak intelligently about calculus and be able to help their friends understand it and be able to tutor people in those subjects. We want them to be able to do all of that. So we need the full STEM. So that's just something I wanted to put out there too, because it's just a thought that's been on my mind. Like, cause I keep my ear to the streets, and I be watching, and I be seeing what's going on, and I'm like, because I know, like, you know what I'm saying,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and I I think about, you know, what's going on in some of these spaces, and I hope that they are also, like, teaching the young brothers and the young sisters how to do some actual concrete mathematics,
Yeah.
and develop their algebra skills, their geometry skills. I hope they're really doing that in these programs as well.
Yeah, I would imagine if there's funding behind those things, there some of that stuff is probably garnered towards like who's benefiting from it, I would assume, if they're
Yeah.
skipping over some of those things. So, yeah, what you said earlier about just having a basic understanding of math, I would assume if you understood math just at a basic level, you might not look at basketball as attractive if you knew like the sheer numbers on the amount of kids that get a D1 scholarship, just statistically. You can do all that math, or how good you have to be, or the average height of the person that actually goes, just every bit of math you could possibly do to realize, oh, I'm a better option to go that way. But would that steer people away from, like, how do you feel about that? Would that steer people away from, say, LeBron? Say, he's probably not a good person because he's a freakish body, and you know what I mean? Like, he's going to the league, but someone else, like, like, what do you actually do? Like, do you do this thing that you have the passion for and love for in basketball, or do you go this way because the numbers say that the likeliness of you having more success in that field in the world say go that way? Like, what do you do?
I
What do you
mean,
think?
if that's what you want to do, you know, pursue it. I say pursue it. But again, when you think about like professional athletes, especially football players, the average, what is it, so-called, what term should I use? Lifespan of
Yeah,
a football player is like 5 years.
actually shorter than three.
So yeah, so 3 years.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it varies by position
Mm-hmm.
too as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you gotta have a plan for, like, okay, if you get to the league, what are you gonna do after that's over?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you want to have options, and everybody's not gonna be a commentator. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of things you can do around, football or around basketball, around sports in general, that, mathematical skills can contribute to and give you those options. I mean, if you like sports, that's fine. But I want our children to have options. I want them to have serious options, because it can't be the whole, like, what Biggie say, if you sling a crack rock or you got a wicked jump shot.
Yeah.
Like, we got to get off of that. It's a lot of young brothers out here, that believe in that, and a lot of young sisters out here that believe in that. So they attracted to the brothers that's taking that route, that
Yeah.
believe in that. So nah, you got more options than that.
Yeah, the shit just rhymes.
Yeah, you got more options than that. But the reality is, for a lot of them, they believe they don't have more options than that. So again, like to my point earlier about creating institutions and building something, right? We have to create spaces and institutions and programming where we can convince young people that you have more options in that. Because maybe in their community, that's all they see. Maybe that's all they see. Even if there's more things there, that might still be their perception. They might have a limited perception. So they might be thinking like, yo, I either gotta hit the block, like, or I gotta, like, go to the league. You know what I'm saying? That's the only way we getting out the hood, man. Like, but again, if you're training them in mathematics early on, then they start thinking like, okay, well, I can take the science route, be a physicist, I could do this, do that, computer science. I got some other options, like, and even, a lot of times it's about exposure. Like, I was talking to some young brothers at this, and it's like after school program, I guess, like they like some youth in this nonprofit organization down North Philly called iDay. I got the opportunity to like talk with some of them about math. That's what I do. I talk math to anybody that'll listen. And another person that was a facilitator was there, and she asked them, each of them, what they want to be. And one of them mentioned he wanted to be an auto mechanic. And then I asked him, I said, bro, have you ever considered being a mechanical engineer? And again, my position is that there's nothing wrong with being an auto mechanic, but I could tell that nobody ever talked to him about what a mechanical engineer does, what it entails. Because it's like, okay, it's cool that, like, you like cars. Like, cars are appealing to you. Cool. You could fix cars, right? That's fine. But there's other options. What if you wanted to be the person designing the cars in the first place? That's mechanical engineering.
Yeah.
But if don't nobody ever had that conversation with that young brother, that won't even be on his radar.
Yeah, so it's about exposure.
About exposure. Once it's on his radar, now it's like, okay, these are the steps you got to take, right? You got to have a strong math background, right? Because again, back to the STEM programs, it might be a STEM Saturday program, a STEM after school program where they're building remote control cars or building robots, which are using some of the same principles that are used in mechanical engineering, right? But you got to have that conversation, right? And a lot of them young people, they don't even have, nobody has that conversation with them about what the options are. It's like, okay, this what you like, cool. This what you like, cool. This what we're gonna do. I'm gonna expose you to this, you know. But again, it's all about math. Math is the gatekeeper. Math is that major gatekeeper, because once you got the math skills, then a lot of things start sounding very reasonable, right? A lot of people, they don't have the math skills, so it's like there's this whole like segment of reality and of life that it's like you can't go over there.
Yeah.
That ain't for you.
Yeah.
That's behind a locked door. You not getting in there, right? But once you got math skills, then it's like I got access. You got access to everything. So now you have the good problem of having too many choices. It's almost like the 12th grader in high school that has the problem of, damn, I got to decide which college I'm going to go to. Because like 15 schools accepted me and 10 of them gave me scholarship money. So now you got a problem, bro.
Yeah.
Well, you got a problem, sis. It's a good problem to have, though, because you got a lot of options. So now you got to sit there and do some analysis and figure out, damn, what's going to be the best spot for me to go to? What part of the country do I want to be in? Do I want to be in the HBCU? Do I want to be in the HWCU? What's the best opportunity? You know, which school has the major that I want? You know, do I want to go to a large population, school with a large population, school with a small population? Like, what do I want to do, right? When you got the math skills, everything is open to you.
Yo, I got a question for you right there. So it's about instilling confidence in kids at a young age. I appreciate that, because now I feel like that's going to be something that I do at my home, make sure that I instill that confidence, because you're right. It definitely closes doors. When you feel you discomfort with math, you start to feel like there's more things that you can't do than can do. That's how I felt personally, for sure. There's a lot of options that just like, I can't do that. There's math there. Can't do that. There's math there. Can't do that. And really, literally, math is everywhere. So you just start to feel like, well, the only thing I can do is use my body, which is a resource it doesn't last forever. It's a finite resource. And your brain, you can use that until you check.
Yeah, you feel boxed in.
Yeah.
Like what? But yeah, man. Like once you can, yeah. This has really been a great conversation, because I've been able to like unpack a lot of thoughts I've had for a while that I might not have unpacked in some other spaces. Yeah. But yeah, like once you got the math skills, it's like what can't you do?
Yeah, you can do everything.
Like what can I
do anything? Yeah, it's almost hard to even describe it, because literally, like I hopefully maybe there's a way you can do it better than me to articulate that, but the avenue, you can do anything, because everything is math. There's nothing you can't do.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Like, what can't you can do everything. You can analyze, you can computate, you can do this. Everything is numbers. Like, what can't you do?
And you don't have to be the person that like ends up on a college campus as a freshman trying to decide what your major is, so then you can then register and talking to an academic advisor and saying to yourself, well, I don't really know what I want to major in, but I just know I'm not good at math. Mm-hmm. So then as you're having the conversation with the academic advisor and they're telling you, well, what about this major? What about that major? And then you looking at the course sequence and you're like, oh, I got to take calculus. Nah, I'm cool.
Yeah.
I'm good.
Closing the door, right?
Yeah. So all these majors, now you feel disqualified. You disqualified yourself from all these majors, all because you didn't have a strong math background. Mm-hmm. And again, that's social engineering. That's a form of social engineering. Like there's nothing coincidental, like AZ said on Illmatic. There's nothing coincidental or accidental about none of this. Like it's social engineering to keep our children out of those STEM fields, to keep them out of them science fields, them technology fields, engineering, the math fields, anything math related. You got to convince them young that math is too hard. Once you get them, you get in their mind. You brainwash them that they can't do math. You brainwash them that math is too hard. A lot of things are difficult in life. A lot of things. So why is it that one subject, this one subject, mathematics, is the subject where we just check out? Like, oh, once it gets hard, see, and then we believe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, no, it's supposed to be difficult. You're just learning it. This is a brand new topic. You've never seen it before in your life. Why are you so upset? Right? We're programmed, and we have these emotional responses, these emotional reactions. You're programmed to think that this is too hard. Like you get the brand new video game, right? The new 2K or the new Madden or whatever. Like, well, I mean, maybe that's not a good example because people been playing Madden and 2K for like 20 years, right? They don't change that much from year to year. But you get the new video game you never played before, and it's hard. What you do? Stay up all night till you get better.
Yeah.
Right? You might get off the sticks, get back on it. Because you want to conquer that game. You want to know how to play that game. You want to know how to play it well. Right? With math, why is it different? Once math gets hard, see, this too much.
Yeah.
See, I can't do this. What's the point? What's the point of the video game?
Yeah.
Right? It's programming. We're socially engineered, right? We socially engineered to disqualify ourselves so for two main reasons, I believe. So there will be less competition for those that are not being fed, that bill of goods, right? That math is too hard. So the children that are being taught from an early age, no, you can do math. You're supposed to do math and you can do well. And when I notice you're doing poorly at it, I'm going to get you a tutor. I'm going to get you more support. That's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
Because I value that. And I want you to be able to excel in math, right? So that's the one reason that we're taught that. Also, it limits our ability to problem solve.
Yeah.
It limits our ability to problem solve in a big way.
Yeah.
And if you can't problem solve, your problems will persist. And, think about the Latin term cui bono. Cui bono means who benefit. Basically, it translates to who benefits, right? For every problem we have, a lot of times we don't take a balanced approach when we analyze problems. We often just look at the problem and the victim of the problem, right? We don't look at who benefits from the problem. So if I have a problem, somebody's benefiting from my problem. What happens when I solve my problem? When I solve my problem, now I have created a problem for them because I eliminated their benefit. I eliminate my problem. And see, again, mathematical. That's a mathematical concept right there. Mathematical, scenario. I eliminate my problem. I simultaneously eliminate their benefit because they're benefiting from my problem.
Yeah, you might eliminate their business because isn't that how business are designed? They look to solve problems. Isn't that how most? Yeah, they look for a need or somewhere to fill a space where there's a problem, whether it's manufactured problem, which it sounds like that may be, or not, and they fix that.
So you got millions of black people that you convince, right? You control the society. There are literally millions of black people, black children that grow up and become adults, right? Become adolescents, become teenagers, become adults. And you've convinced them, you've socially engineered them to believe that the main subject that can develop their problem solving ability is beyond them. It's too difficult. It's irrelevant. It's unimportant, right? You convince them of that. Then how are they going to learn how to solve problems? They're not going to learn how to solve problems. We're not going to learn how to solve problems. And then our problems are just going to persist.
Yeah, and then they become the ones that create the solutions and benefit from it monetarily.
And then we feel like, we need them to come solve our problems. We need a hero. We need a savior.
Yeah.
Nah, you don't need that. You don't need you are who you've been looking for.
Yeah.
But in the absence of problem solving ability, you always gotta look to somebody else.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe in all shape and form taking your own power. You have to take your own power and control of your life. I want to ask you a super random question real quick. This one's just for the sake of content. This is just a fun one here.
All right.
What you think about Terrence Howard?
Terrence Howard.
I know you had to have heard him speak a little bit by now. And this is kind of old, but he was interesting to me. But let me let you go. What you think about what he's talking about?
I tried to read some of what he wrote about his theory about what do you say, like 1 + 1 = 2.
Yeah.
And I think he was so in algebra we have something called domain restrictions, right? Where something may not apply in every situation. But in math, we make allowances for that. What he seemed to be doing is saying, well, because the domain restriction exists, or because this doesn't apply in every situation, therefore we can just debunk it. It shouldn't exist at all. And I'm like, that's not reality. Yeah. It was something else. Because I was having a lot of conversations about him when he was circulating on the internet a lot. And saying like, what did he say? 1 + 1 = 1 or something like that?
It was something like that. 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2 or some shit. I forget what it was. But I wanted to ask you a question. So you know how you said we allow it? Is that for the sake of resolution? Like some of these allowances need to be made?
Yeah. So
without it, like how do you resolve?
Like for example, like in algebra, well not even in algebra, just in arithmetic, we can't divide by 0. That does not exist. That's not possible. You can't divide according to the rules of division and the rules of mathematics. We can't divide by 0, right? We can divide by 1. 0 can be divided by other numbers, but we can't divide by 0. So that would not exist. So that's like an example of one of those situations where it's like there's something that we typically can do with certain numbers, but then with that number, with dividing by 0, we can't do that. Like it can't be done. And then, there are a lot of there are multiple situations, such as that. But I think it sounded to me that what he was attempting to do was say that because there are situations where some things can't be done, that means we should just basically just scrap the whole system. And the thing I didn't like about his commentary was that the reaction to it, people that already have a negative disposition about mathematics and already have been socially engineered to run away from math and fear it, they're going to take his words. And again, he's a black celebrity. Yeah. That's another problem we have in our community. We put far too much stake and trust in the words and the opinions of black celebrities, right? They're celebrities, right? Yeah. He's not a mathematician necessarily, but people are going to use his words to justify and say, look, see, that's why I don't need to learn this. Yeah. Because this actor, I shouldn't say that. I don't want to discredit, because I think he has done some research. Yeah. So I'm not in a position, I've never had a conversation with the brother. Yeah. I can't completely discredit, his research. And, what I try to do is like, I don't want to, again, I try to take a mathematical / scientific approach. I didn't want to just dismiss him just on his face. I really want to read what he had to say.
Yeah, it's not like you're saying that's solely who he is. You're just framing it.
I just want. Yeah, because I'll give any idea some credence. Mm-hmm. I like to study things and then and find the holes, even if I disagree with it. I want to study it and find the holes in it.
Enjoy solving problems.
I don't want to just dismiss somebody and just say, because some people. This is another thing. What I didn't like was I noticed that some people was just dismissing him and just calling him an idiot. And I'm like, I'm not going to call him an idiot. I didn't study his work. I don't know. He might be onto something. And the thing is, in mathematics, just like in science, that's how progress is made. Mm-hmm. People challenge the accepted beliefs in the community. But then when you challenge it, you know what I'm saying? It's like, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be serious. You gotta be on point. Or else, because you're putting yourself out there and you're going to be held to scrutiny.
There's going to be some resistance to that too. Yeah. And there was, a lot of resistance to it. I get it. I don't like it. I can't relate to it, obviously, because I don't exist in that space of academia where, my prestige and who I am isn't tied to what I've studied my entire life. So, some of these people, like when they talk about math, they feel like they are math. It's like, no, you're just a guy that studied math. You know what I mean? Like, and you could be wrong because, again, you're just a guy, and he could be right. You know why? Because he's just a guy. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, But from what I saw, like from what I read, based on his explanation for his reasoning, I disagreed with it based upon the math that I've studied and that I've been taught.
I got you.
Yeah.
So basically what you're saying is Terrence Howard don't know shit. Gotta make some content out of it. You gotta make something out of it.
See, that's gonna be the clip. That's gonna be the clip.
I'm gonna intro us with that. You're saying this Terrence Howard don't know shit. No, man, I appreciate you. I appreciate everything that you just shared here today. I feel like we got busy today. We put in a nice long one, and it didn't even feel that long. I just wanted to let you go because I know you said you had to be somewhere.
Yeah, gotta go do some tutoring.
Got to get up out of here, but thanks for coming on the show and sharing everything that you got. Appreciate you so much, Mr. Akil Parker. All this math?
All this math.
Is all this math the only thing that you have going on? You got anything else going on you want to shout out, drop in?
Well, everything is All This Math related. So definitely please, find the YouTube channel, All This Math. Please subscribe, like, share, drop some comments on the videos. Definitely share the resource. I want All This Math to be the go-to resource for our community. So, if your children don't understand their teacher, they can come learn from me. If you're a parent and you want to be able to help your children with their homework, come on over to All This Math. Come over to the YouTube channel. We also offer private tutoring. We do educational consulting. We also have resources. Also, my book, How to Use All This Math, Volume 1 is available. I'm in the process of working on Volume 2. And what the book is just, I take everyday activities and I show parents, grandparents, uncles, aunties, whoever, how that could become an algebra lesson, or that could become a arithmetic lesson, or a geometry lesson. Again, trying to meet people where they are and show them how you can do things in the home, in the kitchen, in your car, to help prepare the children for math class. Because oftentimes what happens is, again, based on our own, again, social engineering, many of us believe that all we got to do is just send our kids to school, and the school will be able to fully educate them and get them to proficiency in mathematics. The school's not equipped to do that.
Yeah.
The school's not equipped to do that. A lot of children are, and that's why a lot of math anxiety develops, because they go into the math class cold, not knowing almost anything, and then they're overwhelmed and bombarded with all these different concepts and ratios, proportions, percentages, this traditional algorithm for addition, this other method for multiplication, all this type of stuff. And these are things that we could be doing in the household.
Yeah, to prepare.
So I wrote, so instead of just being, and a lot of people say that, they be like, oh, y'all parents need to do this, y'all parents need to do that. Instead of me being one of those people that just wants to basically attack black people, right? And promote this myth of black pathology, right? I wanted to create a resource. So the book is a resource where parents can actually I give you examples. Like, okay, like when you're riding in the car and y'all are doing this, you can do this. This can become a math lesson about this topic. When you're in the kitchen doing this can become a math lesson about this topic. And it's 20 different topics in there in volume 1. It's going to be another 20 in volume 2 when that comes out. My goal is to have it out by the end of the year. We might be looking at like first quarter 2025 at this point, though.
How do we get it?
It's available on Amazon.
Okay.
Available on Amazon right now, volume 1.
And what's it called again? One more time?
How to Use All This Math, volume 1.
Okay.
How to Use All This Math, volume 1. Yeah. So that's available on Amazon. So definitely check out the book, buy the book. The holidays are coming up. Buy the books as, a gift for some people, but make sure you use the book. Make sure you use it. I appreciate support, but I want people to really use it. Use the resources, right? Definitely come over to the YouTube channel. Use the YouTube channel. If you're interested in tutoring, reach out to us on our website, allthismath.com. And also follow us on social media, because I post reels, just, showing the relevance of math, as whenever possible, and also giving tips on how we can practice math just in our everyday lives. Because one of the reasons people are poor at math is because they don't do math.
Yeah.
So conversely, if you want to excel in math, you got to do math. A lot of people don't do math. So I, on my Instagram and pretty soon on TikTok, when I start posting content on there too, I just talk about like different little ways that, people might think are insignificant, but different ways that we can practice math. Because once you practice math and you get into the habit of practicing math, and then you start having mathematical conversations in your household and with your children, then they become more mathematically oriented. And then that's how they become math scholars, But math is not really, it can get difficult at times, and that's cool. It's supposed to. But, as long as you keep at it, you can become, proficient at math. You can master a lot of it. You got to put the work in, just like with anything, just like with sports. If you got children that play sports, play football, play basketball, baseball, soccer, whatever, they practice. A lot of your children have been playing sports forever. You know what I mean? So
and it's easier on the body. There's another thing. Let's go to the math because it's easier on the body. If your kid's out there kicking the ball around and tearing his knees apart, get him in there behind the math book. Something that's the longevity of that and the success rate is a little higher, and you don't got to risk getting a concussion or anything like that.
True. No CTE. And let me say one more thing about that too, like about athletics. So I just started creating some content on my YouTube channel about quarterback passer ratings. Right. I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan. I'm not technically a Ravens fan. I'm a Giants fan, but I'm a big Lamar Jackson fan.
Yeah.
I want to see that brother win. I definitely want to see that brother win. But and plus, I grew up in Baltimore. So, but I've been doing some content on like quarterback passer ratings and how to calculate them. It's an algebraic formula, right? And one of the things I want, so to all the parents that have children that have been playing sports for a while, I want your children to be able to take ownership of their experience as athletes by being able to calculate their own statistics instead of having to just rely on somebody else telling them what their stats are or whatever if a child's a quarterback, don't just wait for somebody to tell you his passer rate or his completion percentage. Make sure he knows how to calculate it himself, right? If your son or your daughter plays basketball, make sure they can calculate their own statistics. So that's going to be some of the content that I'm kind of like, weaving in as well. Because again, it's all about relevancy, and it's about infiltrating the circus. You know what I'm saying? Like sports is a part and parcel of the bread and circuses. You know what I'm saying? So if that's where the people at, that might be where I'm at sometimes. You know what I'm saying? But we got to meet people where they are. So if I want people to learn math, I got to go where they at and teach them math right where they at, so they can see the benefit and the value. And then, that will, ideally, or most likely help to develop the critical thinking ability. And then once that happens on a large scale, then maybe we start to divest from the circus, at some point. You know what I'm saying? But like I said earlier, it ain't gonna work by just standing on the sidelines, hating, yelling, and being mad at black people from being in the circus. You know what I'm saying? You got to get in there, get in the trenches, roll your sleeves up, and get to work. You know what I'm saying? If we really love our people, that's another thing too. A lot of our people don't really love our people. You know what I'm saying? So that's why it's so easy and so comfortable for them to just basically just sit on the sidelines and talk trash, because the love ain't there.
I think for some of us it takes time, myself included, based on how you what your life was like in the society. How your perspective, even that you have on your own self, is shaped by your experience and
Definitely.
the things that have been oppressed upon you. It took me, I wouldn't say, it took me some time, for sure. Yeah, it definitely takes some time, especially if you have depending on what your household is like, no dad, like trying to find love for yourself and your people. It'll take a minute for some, but shout out to you, man. Appreciate you for coming in again. Thank you so much. I love what you're doing. I like that you're talking the talk and walking the walk. The fact that you have this awareness that there is people on the sideline hating, and that you're coming in and you're doing the work in all aspects, not just talking it, doing it.
Yeah.
That's a big move right there. And I think it's just a lot to take on for most people. I think that's why a lot of people opt out of doing it, just because, the work is the work, like we were talking about before, in all aspects. And choose your hard.
Choose your heart. Yeah, man, choose your heart. Just play your position. That's why I think that's part of why I don't ever get overwhelmed. I'm just like, listen, I'm just playing my part.
Yeah.
A lot of people have a part to play, and if more of us played our part, then we'd win. And we will win. We will. I might not see it in my physical lifetime, but we will win.
Yeah. I feel like we're winning right now.
I agree.
This is a win right now. You know the math on that.
I
Like,
agree.
subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. Thanks for joining us, people. Appreciate you, man. We'd like to thank you for tuning in to The Awakened Avoidant. We hope our convo has provided you with insight, inspiration, and healing energy. As you go about your week, let's continue to work together to heal ourselves and our community. Stay safe and continue to spread healing vibes wherever you go. Catch a new episode Wednesday weekly on all platforms.